Well, happy Thursday to you, if it can be a happy Thursday on the 26th of October. I had to check my watch twice. I couldn't believe it was already the 26th. George Brauchler in here on The George Show, 710 KNUS. Lots going on today. I want to assure you that we are following and will discuss in as much detail as is available to us later in the show the ongoing manhunt for a person who appears to have, and the numbers are still unsettled, which is weird. CNN's reporting 22 dead in Maine, Lewiston, Maine. It looks like it took place, from the articles I'm reading, over 3 separate shooting locations: a bowling alley, a diner, and a Walmart distribution center. Still trying to figure that out. This guy's on the run. There's a lot of details out there about him that are starting to surface. I mean, we'll talk about this later too, but candidly, I'm not sure how the police can call this guy only a person of interest after publishing pictures to the public of this guy walking around the bowling alley with the actual rifle. I don't know what they're interested in talking to him about. He seems like he's a suspect, but what do I know? I'm not sure that's a distinction that makes much difference at this point. But the manhunt is on. They haven't found him. They found his car. If you are just hearing this for the first time, you just got to hop on the internets anywhere. CNN, Daily Wire, I'm sorry, Daily Mail. Daily Mail does such a good job of accumulating all the information out there in the interwebs and putting it together. You can get caught up on that as well. But a lot of details, a lot of things to talk about. Not sure where this case goes, but we will talk about it. It is 22 is huge. That is epic. And by the way, dozens and dozens. I heard last night upwards of 60 plus attempt murder victims or shooting victims who did not die. So this is, especially for a state like Maine, where there's only 200 people there to begin with. And I know it's more than that, but you get my point. Is it is not like us. It's not like Florida, Texas, California. It's not like that. It's just smaller. But we'll talk about that as the show goes on. I didn't want to begin with that just because there are still things developing right now, waiting on a press conference. We'll probably get to that in the 7 o'clock hour. But I do want to, as much as I can, stay caught up on the other things that are going. That kind of dominated part of my evening after being able to watch a little bit of basketball. I was busy last night for a bit. But then got to watch the last half of the Mavericks Spurs game with Chumbawamba or Ambawamba. I can't remember who
Wembanyama.
the guy.
Victor Wembanyama.
Wembanyama.
Yeah.
That dude he's like 9'3" or something like that. It's very, very tall. He's the number 1 draft choice, and I get it. I mean, I get it. They lost, by the way, but
I've been checking some of the highlights and stuff. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, again, I was a touch skeptical, not overly skeptical, but a touch skeptical. But wow, my God,
this kid's gonna do great things.
He blocked his first shot in his first 35 seconds of playing.
Yeah, we all do that.
Yeah, and the issue being is and the funny thing was it was Kyrie Irving, and nobody. Yeah, and Irving is not used to, and a lot of the NBA players are going to have to get used to is when you're trying to shoot over him, you have to choose a different trajectory because of where he can get to.
That's right. Like you're shooting out of a bottle.
Yeah. So you've got to totally change it. Did you see his nutmeg?
No, I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but if it's the ball between the legs,
yes,
I didn't.
That's what it is. It's the ball between the legs. There's a turnover and it gets pushed to him, and there's a defender standing right in front of him with one hand, with his right hand. He takes the ball with his right hand and in one motion pushes it on the ground and bounces it between the defender's legs and runs around him and keeps running down the court. Yeah. And again, I appreciate that because, again, French kid. So the kid has played some soccer. Kid has understood this.
He understands the soccer thing.
There are some things inside of the game of basketball that European players see and do because of their experience with soccer. And that is one of them. The other one is the Euro step. And if you watched it, Wembanyama last night, Euro step from the free throw line. One step, boom, dunk. Just
is that like
crazy.
The dub step?
Kind of, sort of. Yeah.
Is it?
It's just not as much Skrillex music.
Say his name again.
Wembanyama.
Chumbawamba.
Yeah, Wembanyama.
No, Wembanyama. Yeah.
What I am worried about, his youth will help him. What I'm worried about is his lack of muscles.
Oh, he's a thin dude.
Yeah, and when you're playing this many games, he's never existed in a basketball league in his life that plays games this often and plays this many. And so let's see what happens at game 30. Let's see what happens at game 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80. Because I have a feeling those final 30 may be a little bit different just based on his body. And it's just because he's got to build up some strength, because there are going to be a few big men in the league that will be able to take advantage of him simply because of where his center of gravity is. And that's going to be a problem. Now, his arm reach is going to make up for a lot of that. But where his center of gravity sits and his lack of size is going to create some problems. The person that would have been really interesting to watch play against him, there would have been two centers I would have been real intrigued to see play against him, and that'd be Shaquille O'Neal and Hakeem Olajuwon, because of how they manipulate the body of their opponent. I would have been really interested to see how
Hakeem's a good reference, because he seems body-wise a lot like Hakeem. But I remember when King James comes on board out of 6th grade or whenever the hell he started. He was also a skinny kid, but since then, man, the dude has packed on the beef.
But he was bigger, in my opinion. He was bigger when he came out of high school than Wembanyama is now, just based on muscular. Wembanyama, because of his frame, could have the same amount of muscles. It's just stretched, and so he doesn't have the size. LeBron didn't have the size he has now, not even close. But he did look like he was at least 6 or 7 years older than the rest of the kids on the court. And where Wembanyama, you put Wembanyama on a college court, he looks about the same, because he's in that same age range. So,
it was a great game to watch. I was really impressed with Dallas, because Dallas was down by a bunch, and they just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. And people whose names I can't pronounce well that Graham had to correct me on, like, it's apparently not Doncic.
No.
So Graham's like, Dad, no, that's not it. But an incredible game. Nonetheless, I'm not even a basketball guy, but the NBA has done such a nice job these first couple nights of making great pairings that I'm
they made it attractive. They made it very, very attractive. They've done a good job. A little bit of happiness, a little bit of sadness in my life yesterday, having to do with sports. It was Champions League. And
Newcastle.
They lost. We lost 1-0 at home.
Does that mean you're gone? You're eliminated?
No, this is the round robin. And it was happy and it was sad, because my German team, Borussia Dortmund, was who they were playing against. So I couldn't be totally depressed. Couldn't be totally depressed, but
bittersweet.
But if I wanted to, Newcastle all day, every day over Borussia Dortmund, not a problem. So it was a little bit of it was painful, but it was, again, somewhat nice to see Dortmund take the win. It's a boring game. We did not play well, and it was awful. There were some shots that were horrible. However, the best game is a team that we talked about earlier in the week off the air. You were so kind to bring me back a chocolate bar.
Oh, I did. That's right.
Yeah, from the Celtic shop in it's over in Scotland.
Yeah, in Scotland.
And so and that's important, because people that are familiar with Scottish football, there is a real religious divide.
Now, I didn't know this, by the way, because I did come across a Rangers store as well.
Oh, boo.
And I was like,
boo.
Sorry.
No, because Rangers are the Protestant team. The Catholics. Yeah, the Catholics.
They're going to burn.
That's Celtic. And so Celtic played yesterday against Atletico Madrid, and that was the game I chose to watch. The small screen had my Newcastle game on, but the Celtic Atletico game was much better. So I switched part of the way through. I started out with Newcastle and then switched over to Atleti and Celtic, and that was fantastic. That was 2-2, and that was a knockdown, drag-out fight to where both teams were just running at each other in that last 5 minutes. It was just end to end to end, people trying to score, and Celtic appreciably is less talented than Atletico.
Oh, really?
And so, to see them even. Oh, and it was in Glasgow. So wonderful
we were
night.
Just there.
Yeah.
Dang.
So wonderful atmosphere, wonderful night, crowd going crazy. It was one of those special European soccer nights, because as people talk about in the NFL, playoff hockey is different than regular season hockey. European Champions League soccer is different than regular league soccer.
Oh, really?
It's just different. It's a different animal entirely. There's different pressure. There's a different atmosphere.
Sounded very Frontier Airlines there for a moment.
So that's it. So that's a little bit of happiness, a little bit of sadness, and I gave away a ton of beer last night.
Well, that was the thing I was hoping you would talk about a little bit, because, and it ties in again, selfishly, to my trip that we just took. We've talked about the soccer team. There was no soccer going on, by the way, or football as they call it over there, while I was there. So
you're on the international break.
Yeah, I wanted to see a game. There were no games.
No.
But I told you, we did the Harry Potter experience, and yesterday.
So did I.
Billy had the Harry Potter experience.
Yes, but mine was the bar experience. Yeah, it was a Harry Potter.
Which is how Harry Potter, was there butter beer, or was it just beer?
It was beer.
And there was butter.
But I made reference to it.
Oh, you did? Of course. Of course.
I made reference to, this is some of the finest, and I talked about the fact that it was nice because I was doing Harry Potter themed trivia, and those are the nights that everybody turns out. So my announcement was, It is so nice that all of you have used, your broomsticks, your port keys, your flying cars and motorcycles.
All the references,
yeah, exactly.
all the things.
Yep. In order to join us from a great night out away from the three broomsticks, here you will find some of the best butter beer, made flavors around. We will do this and we'll give away this many galleons.
They carried you around on their shoulders or something, like you had just won Quidditch.
No, I wish they would.
You just caught the snitch.
No, but they wanted to. There was because I gave away so much free beer. The bar manager is like, listen, this is about having fun and making sure these people enjoy themselves.
Can't have fun without alcohol.
Yeah,
good lesson.
Yes. Yeah, so I do a mini game between rounds 1 and round 2, but I'm looking at it and I showed you the picture. I had 39 teams last night.
Packed.
39. It was standing room only in the bar. So I don't want that many teams to play and to not walk away with something. It sucks to figure out that you spent that night and yeah, we've had fun, but there's no winning involved. That's why, and I told you about it. That's why radio stations, when you go to those festivals and stuff, hand out tchotchkes because some sort of free gift, that you feel like you've gotten something like that. And so I had this idea since I had all these free beer coupons right before round number 1. 3 minutes beforehand, I just hair up my rear end. I decided, hey, we got an idea, guys. I want to make sure that we start tonight off right. If you are wearing a Harry Potter t-shirt, Harry Potter hat, Harry Potter bracelet, you've got an element of a costume, an accessory, even a Harry Potter tattoo, I'm starting your night off with a free beer.
Oh,
and so I had everybody walk up. Yeah, I gave away at least 20.
I asked the question everybody wants to know, and that is the tattoos.
Yes.
What were they and where were they?
Deathly Hallows, both on the arm. And one up on the bicep, one on the inside of the wrist. But both were the Deathly Hallows, so it's the triangle.
I just wanted to hear that one guy grabbed the collar of his shirt, pulled it down to reveal Hermione right by his heart,
However,
something like that.
I did have one woman, and she won one of the rounds. Just fun. She really knew her stuff. She comes up and she is wearing her Gryffindor robe. She's got the robe,
but nothing else.
I found out she had stuff underneath, but she flashed me. And so what she
hello.
Yeah, so she goes, and she opens up the thing, and she's got a Gryffindor shirt on it and stuff. And then
did you just blurt out like Hufflepuff?
Yeah, I went, whoa. And then some of the people in the crowd, they're like, whoa, that's a lot of magic. I'm like, yes, yeah. Yeah. So that was
making me all Slytherin over that.
Oh, speaking of that, here are some of the team names last night. Because again, these guys showed out. Okay. Some of the names last night, 3 broomsticks, but it's BREWM, broomsticks, like brewing. See how they did that? Dead serious. Yeah.
Good one.
Granger Zone.
Nice.
Yeah. Hit it in Quidditch. Yeah.
That's a good one. I like that
one. The Moaning Muggles.
Moaning Muggles.
Yep, the Slughorn Snoggers. I had the Raven's Claw, the Golden Snitches, the Griffin Porgs, the Griffin Dorks, the Nifflers, Claw, Puff, and Slither In. That was a nice one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Madam Hoochie Mamas.
Madam Hoochie Mamas is
my favorite one, and I gave this team a free beer just because of the team name. This was my favorite one all night, and I giggled the entire night. Neville gonna give you up, Neville gonna let you down.
Oh, that's a good one.
That is my favorite. That was just like I read that and was like, you win. And this is like the first question of the round. I'm like, you got to come up here. I got to give you a free beer for that.
Snitches,
just for that.
No snitches get stitches.
No,
or snitches cause stitches.
No, they didn't have that one. Yeah, but they were fantastic. It was such a really, really fun night.
That's great.
It's great to have that. And tonight I'm doing a office Halloween party.
Huh?
Yeah, I know.
Do you get to announce the business on air? Is it?
No, not doing that.
Yeah. Does it rhyme with the Broncos?
No, not
that kind of an office.
But they're wrapping up and they're cutting out a touch early. So I'm showing up around 5 and I'm going to play music for a couple hours for them and they're just going to hang out. So
we should continue the quiz. Is it at the airport?
No, I'm not going to tell you where
is it at.
Well, here's the thing.
Is it at the Gold Dome?
I don't remember where it is.
Now that's an easy way to. You just Bidened your way out of that answer.
I know I'm going to Parker, but I don't remember the name.
There are a lot of businesses in Parker.
Yes, too. I don't remember, and I'm afraid someone's listening and that is working there,
and
maybe they're like, "Hey, this
post
idiot
office."
Doesn't."
That's what it is right there.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea where I'm going.
Yeah, good way out.
Yeah, I'm going to try to figure it out later, and I actually have got over here.
Something seeping.
No, I've got the this is the laptop, and so during our off-air moments today. I need to assemble several playlists.
The Avengers.
Several playlists. And so
what's the theme? Can you say what the theme is?
Well, it's Halloween. And here's the problem, though.
Got it.
Yeah, it's Halloween, but it's an office. But I don't know the demographics. And that's really important when I'm crafting the music.
Yeah. So like the age range of these folks and stuff like that.
I have no idea what they're going to respond to. So I am in the process of creating 3 different playlists based on potential demographics. Is it going to be boomers? Is it going to be boomers,
Are
Xers,
you
millennials?
required to do Monster Mash regardless of the age range, or is
Yes.
that dated?
Yeah.
Like,
No,
you can't do it for
you
anyone
have
under
to.
40.
No, you have to do that, and you have to play Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Of course.
There's some sort of a law, I think, that I saw. That
a Vincent Price part of that thing
Yeah,
either?
you have to. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
well,
entire thing.
maybe that's what texters can do, is they've texted in right now. Maybe they text in great Halloween songs. I don't know. And then you could have,
There
I
are
mean,
not
you know
many.
everything, but
Yeah.
obviously there are albums and albums. I
Yeah.
mean, there's an entire genre on
Yeah.
Apple
The
Music.
thing is, you can't necessarily just do the Halloween music because.
Speaking of it, how about that?
I thought about that, but it's not very danceable. Yeah, that's the thing.
It's murderable. It's
It
not
is.
danceable.
It is not danceable. So I'm reaching outside to figure out what other types of songs and things I can get, but I've got to intersperse them because, again, I've got to make it danceable. And again, I don't know what they're going to respond to, because not only am I worried about the genre, or the demographics of who's going to be there, I've also got to be worried about beats per minute, because that's also vitally important based on who's going to be there, because you don't know if the crowd's going to respond to 80 to 95 beat per minute, or is it going to be 95 to 110, or is it 115 to 130? And those are totally different demographics. So I got a lot of crap running around in my head right now that's giving me a little bit of stress. But either way, we'll figure it out. It's going to be fun. And as long as the thing that'll be nice is if I can get the 3 playlists set up where I feel comfortable with the amount of music I've got in there, I can switch those out on the fly. So if one thing isn't working, if the demographics responding to something I didn't anticipate, I can switch those out. And my DJ system allows me to pull up 2 different playlists at the same time, so I can mix and match and move things back and forth. So yeah, it's just a lot of background kind of homework details beforehand. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Well, buddy, that sounds like it was an exciting night.
It was so much fun. It was so much fun. One of the teams was 50% kids. The parents had come in with their kids, and their kids were dressed up.
That's fantastic.
It was
and
amazing.
It's kid appropriate, other than the alcohol.
Yeah, other than
the
alcohol.
fact that you're pushing the booze.
Everything that we do is kid appropriate, and there's food there and everything else. And the kids were actually out dancing to some of the songs. We talk about getting people to dance. That's one of the things. And I actually changed some of the songs on my playlist based on the fact that I wanted these kids to still be active, because I know then if they're out dancing right in front of me, mom and dad don't have to worry about them and are not entertaining them. So I changed out, because I go through and I try to match songs to questions, and I try to create kind of a playlist that creates a kind of a, ideally when you're putting the music programming together, you can't be at the same tempo the entire time. There's got to be an ebb and a flow like a river. So it's got to build, and then it's got to fall, and then it's got to build. So I changed out some of the songs throughout the evening based on what the kids were doing too. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I had so much fun.
Any of that tonight?
Yeah, I'll do some of that. Again, that's what you got to do. I got to watch and see how they respond. What are they going to do? And the nice part is the system will organize based on song length, themes, beats per minute, stuff like that. I can sort them. So I got to do that. Because the worst thing in the world is doing 125 beat per minute next to a 70 beat per minute song. That's a car crash. The tempos don't match. You can't do that.
See,
can't do that.
That's an expert view of this. I would never have considered that.
Oh, it hurts. It grinds everything to a stop. So you've got to, there's some, a little bit of art behind the scenes.
Meanwhile, tonight I've got the Home Builders Foundation big get together thing. It is waiting on this one sweet auction item thing that I secured from a buddy of mine who does some PGA work. And
some PDA work, is it some sort of
G?
massage?
There's a G in it. It's golf.
Okay.
It's golf
good.
related.
Okay.
Yeah, PGA work. Yeah.
Okay.
And the PDA stuff, I don't know. I'm not on his Instagram, but he sent this awesome stuff to be auctioned off, and
Really?
FedEx says, "Oh yeah, it got delivered last night at 5:24."
Liars.
I don't have it. So, and it says delivered to the residence, and I'm like, nope.
Nope.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, no.
So, a little bit of a panic mode here thing.
Yeah.
Sadly, of course, this is what happens when you and your friends operate on a last minute approach to all organization. Had this been a week ago, easy to fix.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
Day of the thing, not easy to fix. So that a little bit of that, but this will be great tonight. I get to see my dad and Annette. They're going to come out. Trey, of course, will have his chemistry final or not final, but exam up at CSU, so he can't be there. But then we got some other great friends hanging out at the table with us. It should be a good night. It's always inspirational, and it's the kind of thing where I want to believe I'm an empathetic person, and I think I am, but you just truly don't appreciate something until until it happens to you, until you're either the participant, the beneficiary. It becomes necessary.
And for the listener that doesn't know, this is an organization in which these home builders and architects and people come in, and they on their own for free modify homes for people that have disabilities. And it is the large gamut. It's people both born with disabilities to people that develop disabilities.
Get injured too.
Yeah. So that entire gamut, and it is so expensive and so difficult to try to modify your house. And you don't at that point want to pick up and leave your house, especially if this is a disability that has happened to you, because imagine that you've gone through this life-changing moment and now you have to start a different life in a different location, even if it's just a house down the street. Doesn't matter. Recovery, part of that is being safe and feeling secure in a home and being around those usual experiences, because when your life has changed to that degree, having whatever semblance of a normal life helps you get better mentally and helps you physically get better. So this is part of it. These people are just angels on earth. I cannot believe the amount of
chair
things they
lifts
do.
to get you just up and down stairs, open up an entire level of a house to someone who can't manage the stairs and all that stuff. And they pull all the permits. This isn't like some group that's fly by night throwing together some. This is the same quality of everything you would get if you went out and tried to buy it off the shelf, which almost nobody can. It's just, and I don't know, the stories are. The stories are great. I've gone out on some of these visits, and when you're interviewing the family to see if they're an appropriate fit for this, and you look at the house and stuff. I'm no expert in that, but I get to meet the people, and when you got the kids who are at the front edge of something like Trey's gone through, or something worse in some cases, or young adults who something traumatic and unexpected has happened.
Or a parent that now has to deal with the kids, and there's so many things that,
man, you can just see it in the faces of the family. They're just so desperate for some kind of help, because there's I'll just pick up the phone and call this agency and they come out and fix all this stuff. There isn't anything like that. And these guys exist off of all the contributions and the auction items and all that stuff. So tonight's a big deal. They have a bunch of other events throughout the year, but this one is kind of the granddaddy of them all. If I could do my Keith Jackson, I'm like, granddaddy of them all.
That's great.
And it's out at Infinity Park there in Glendale, which, as they will tell you, is an entertainment district. It's not an actual city. It's an
entertainment district.
They will say that.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at how many traffic tickets they write in Glendale, it's right around 0, because they're like, that's not us.
No,
that's Denver. It's a 1 square mile island in the middle of Denver. They're like, Denver can go do that. That's not us. We want people to want to come here, be responsible, have a good time. And so Infinity Park is a perfect location for this sort of place. So I'm excited to do that tonight. I will miss a little bit of Thursday night football, but hopefully I'll be able to catch up with the little G-man.
Yeah, that'll be good. That'll be nice. But this is a beautiful night to go and do that. But it's also going to be a night in which you're like, I'm crying all night, just because of the stories and the people that are touched and what goes on there. That is one of those really, really emotional nights where you come in and you're like, this is fantastic. This is great. But then also at the end, you'll walk out of there and you'll see all these people that are donating their time and their skills for free. And you're like, I'm kind of a piece of crap.
Well, it does. And these people, I just feel I'm humbled because
you're basically like, when I show up at the pearly gates, I'm getting like ticket 200 when they've got like ticket 4.
Right. They're riding first class. That's for sure.
Exactly.
But it does make, if you think you're a good person and then you hang out with these people and you come away feeling like, now at least I've met good people.
Yes,
you know
exactly.
At least I know what a good person is.
Say I know them. Yes.
Yeah. And the stories are great. So I'm excited for that.
Nice.
We'll come back with some good stories tomorrow. Let's do this. Let's cut away for a break. It's just a hair early, which in the past, I'd say 4 or 5 months ago, we would have looked at 6:30 as, man, we're really rubbing up against it. As it is now, we don't even break for the first 3 hours. So this is very, very early. Let's cut away. We're going to come back. We're going to do the Thorpe Report, give Billy ample opportunity to not have to speed read through the stories. We'll take another break, and we'll come back with the good part of the 6 o'clock hour, the most produced, most beloved part. That's called You Choose the News. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes, all in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll 'em Out Shelves, your clutter transformation experts, create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll 'em Out Shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly to clear the clutter. Contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll 'em Out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It is the George Show. It's time, with all the time in the world relative to what we've been doing the last few months. It's Billy Thorpe with the Thorpe Report.
Hey, good morning, sir. And we should be getting some new music from Perry Farrell in the next 6 months or so. And I think he's going to be touring as well. But if you're a fan, just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Possible.
That is,
this guy's singing there, Jane's Addiction. Possible fog this morning, especially up north, gradually burning off. Weak system is going to be accompanied with a cold front and drops to highs in the 60s today. Cooler air is going to move into our state on Friday. High temperatures are going to be well below normal. Over the weekend, we could see our first snow. So make plans that way. But hard freeze is a forecast for Sunday night into Monday morning. So you got a couple more days to drain the swamp cooler and fix that sprinkler system. If not, don't say I didn't warn you. Man's been arrested in connection with the theft of body parts from the mausoleum at Crown Hill Cemetery earlier in the month. Deputies from Jefferson County Sheriff's Office said the 46-year-old John Belknap, yeah, that would be it. Arrested in Denver. You can see I pre-read this. On Tuesday night, after a warrant for his arrest was issued earlier in the day, being held on charges of felony criminal mischief and taking dead stuff. That's at least my interpretation. Yeah. The Inglewood Police Department is asking for your help in locating a man wanted in connection with a deadly shooting. They were dispatched to the 2800 block of South Acoma Street around 1:40 on Tuesday for reports of a man who had been shot. When officers arrived, they found a man suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Taken to the hospital, later passed away. They have not released his identity. They've identified a suspect, however, as Joseph Michael Davino, 52. Shooting was an isolated incident, they say. Suspect and victim did know each other. Barricaded suspect situation in Hidden Valley subdivision of Severance ended in a murder-suicide yesterday, according to the police department. Also, Colorado voters are soon going to get to decide the future Proposition H8, the proposal from state Democrats to reduce the property taxes and spend the Tabor money that you like a lot. Really is no fix, and state Republicans are calling their bluff. State Republican lawmakers yesterday have been very vocal in their opposition to it. They held a press conference yesterday at our state capitol and called on Governor Jared Polis to call a special session in property taxes. Here, listen. Yeah, that's Polis's response.
What?
Thank you. The city of Denver has helped more than 25,000 migrants since December 22nd. That's great, but how much has it cost you and I? $29 million. $29 million to help the 25,000 migrants. I'm not sure about that one. City of Denver is going to sweep an encampment at 21st and Curtis Streets. Denver's 5 Points neighborhood is where that's located. Just last month, the city cleared out a large homeless encampment in Capitol Hill. This is part of the homeless thing we talked about with Mayor Mike Johnston. Currently, they've got 137 people living at a Best Western hotel in Denver, and some of these people in this sweep in Park Hill are going to be swept up in that and going to be housed in the hotel. They're expecting the number of residents in the Best Western Hotel in Denver to now rise to 200. A man from Colorado Springs has pleaded guilty to assaulting a law enforcement officer during the January 6th tourist event that happened at the U.S. Capitol. Jonathan David Grace, 49, was just walking around quietly, normally, and being a tourist, as one was wont to do, but he also pleaded guilty to one count of assaulting and or resisting or impeding officers. Sentencing is going to happen January 30th, 2024. But, you know, he was just a tourist. He didn't actually assault anybody or hurt anybody. Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah, he did that one. But that's
did he
okay.
really?
Yes, he did. So that's all I got.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. That's all I got, man.
That's all the good local stuff.
That's all the wonderful local stuff. Homeless people, dead people, people stealing body parts. You know how it is.
You know, I did see that the new Speaker of the House is also named Michael Johnson. The mayor went out of his way to tweet out, "I'm not that guy." You know, I have a T in my name, and the T makes all the difference. And he went out of his way to say, "I'm not an election denier." You know, I'm not all these other things. It was
yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. We talked off air. We're not going to get into it right now, but the idea that Mr. Johnson, the new speaker, talked about based on his perception of abortion. Very interesting. Very interesting.
That's one we probably should talk about.
Yeah, and it's not the idea of it being legal or illegal. It's what he talks about the results and why we should be happy that we're not having as many abortions, and it has to do with your tax base. But okie dokie. Yeah.
Some other local news, by the way. Sam's number 3, which I love. There's 3 of them out there. Yep. Sam's number 3 is closing its Havana location here at the end of the year. So the one right close to us. I've done several things after the show there. What a huge bummer, man. I'm not sure why it's happening, but they still keep the other 2 locations up there in Denver and
I love
Glendale.
going to that place. I hang out there.
Know.
I had lunch with a friend just like 2 months ago there.
I know. It's I mean, the kitchen sink thing is the bomb. If you don't care about your own health, but you love good food, That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
So,
oh, that's horrible.
yeah, that's horrible. That's bad news. The other things going on, of course, we can cover throughout the show. In the 8 o'clock hour, we are going to have on the phone with us Jack Phillips. He makes cakes, and his attorney, and he fights for Jack's right to make cakes. We're going to talk about that and the things that are going on potentially in front of the Colorado Supreme Court in the near term regarding Jack Phillips. I know the guy gets pulled back into court like nobody I've ever seen. He's in court more than Frank Azar, but he doesn't want to be there. It ends up happening that way. Thank you, State of Colorado. We'll talk with them in the 8 o'clock hour. Stick around. We're going to get to the good stuff, the fun stuff. It's called the You Choose the News. It's George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It's amazing how much time we have here. Billy can actually do, I think, maybe we do multiple advertisers. I don't know, because it's that time of the show.
Yes,
you choose
now,
the news.
As a side note, though, did you hear the song we were just playing there? Because we got a couple of extra minutes. They're going to indulge.
That sounded like, hold on, don't tell me. That's Red Hot.
Yes, that's the Chili Peppers. That song is Soul to Squeeze. Do you remember the 90s comedy that song appeared in? It only was available on that soundtrack for years and years and years until it came out on the Best Of compilation. But it's the only place you could get that single. Super, super popular. And it's a comedy. Do you remember? It was
in the 90s?
Yep, based on a Saturday Night Live sketch.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, what if I said that Dan Aykroyd, Jane Curtin? Old
Coneheads?
school. Yes.
Wow.
Yep, that was off the Conehead soundtrack. And
was it really?
Yep. And
Jane, you ignorant.
And the only reason that always sticks with me that I like that is because that is such a weird song to appear inside of the Conehead soundtrack. Again, this is how my strange little mind works. Coneheads is a sitcom, funny, comedic-based movie. That song, if you listen to it, Anthony Kiedis is dealing with heroin addiction.
Oh, my
He is
sweet
fighting
goodness.
addiction and talking about how the demons, he can't get rid of
Maybe
them.
that's the subliminal
And
message.
the idea is, and when I heard that song and I was familiar with it in the movie, I'm going, wait a minute. Hang on. Funny addiction. It's the only real song that became popular out of that soundtrack. But I just always thought it was a really weird thing that you have this song about heavy heroin addiction and struggles in this comedy movie, and nobody realized it. Everybody's like, that was a nice song. You have no idea what's going on. Oh, well. Sorry, that's it. That's my own.
No, that's we can only do that because I gave you so much time.
I know that is the only reason. So this is what happens when you indulge me. Let that be a lesson to you, sir.
Yeah, you're right.
That is it. This is the time where we get to play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show. You choose the news. We have spent mere moments this morning scouring the interwebs to find really dumb stories. Boy, did I find a few of them. And we've given them even more ridiculous headlines to play this fake radio news game. Why? Because they continue to pay us for it. Yeah, we think it's a bad choice as well, but we're enjoying it. It lets us every once in a while supersize it. It's kind of nice.
Hello.
I know. All righty, sir. Here are your choices this morning. Headline number 1, is this cannibalism? Headline number 2, a skateboarder named Wanda. Headline number 3, embrace your inner Florida man. And headline number 4, Cheech and Chong IRL. All righty, your choices yet again are, is this cannibalism? A skateboarder named Wanda, embrace your inner Florida man, and Cheech and Chong IRL.
Florida man.
Embrace your inner Florida man. Now, if you have been wanting to embrace your inner Florida man, if you have been wanting to do all the crazy things that those Florida guys get to do without consequences, here is your shot. You have got a chance to participate in the inaugural Florida Man Games. Yes, it happens this February. Florida Man memes and headlines we are all familiar with, but this is a competition. It is a one-of-a-kind Floridian spectacle. The game's ticket website says tickets for spectators range from $45, that's general admission, to a wonderful $145 VIP ticket for the event. It's going to be held this coming February 2024 at Francis Field in St. Augustine, Florida. Now, you can register to become one of the 16 teams that are going to be chosen from across Florida. The choosing ends here in a couple of weeks, so you've only got a few more. Now, you do have to be a team of 5 members, at least 18 years of age, and at least one member participates in all the events. Events, sir, you ask. What are they? They are weaponized pool noodle mud duel, where participants will battle it out with pool noodles in an above-ground pool over, well, a bunch of mud. Evading arrest obstacle course. You get to jump fences, run through backyards and other obstacles while a cop chases you down. A real cop, by the way, has donated his time. He's going to really chase you. Yeah, they've got a real cop that's going to chase the people.
And does he bring a baton with him? Is it very Chris Rock?
I'm hoping a taser.
Because if you make the cops chase you, they're bringing a butt whooping with them.
Exactly, yes, they are. The Category 5 cash grab. You get to get a booth and you try to grab all the money that's flying around you. Catalytic converter, 2 bikes, and a handful of copper pipes. Race against time. It's a head-to-head race, and you've got to steal everything that the title says. And then there is a beer belly Florida sumo. Basically, fat bellies trying to push each other out of the arena. There are more things that are happening, but yes, there are judges already. Dan Nitro Clark and Lori Ice Fetrick, formerly American Gladiators, will be in attendance and being judges. There, of course, is going to be a mullet contest and a showing of the Florida Ma'am pinup girls. So it's going to be an event. Get there in February.
Boom.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Oh, thank you. I'll try to live down to your expectations here with the next one. Is this cannibalism? A skateboarder named Wanda or Cheech and Chong IRL?
Well, it's Colorado, Cheech and
Yeah.
Chong.
Cheech and Chong IRL. Here, we're going to a Santa Rosa street vendor who was wandering around. Victor Martinez Diaz, 49-year-old Santa Rosa resident, that according to police, he would periodically pedal his tricycle around as a mobile street vendor snack provider. He was seen around Abraham Lincoln Elementary School on 9th Street. This is kind of his area. He goes around and gives ice cream treats to all of the kiddies in the neighborhood. And for the adults, he has the drugs. Yes, they busted him that he was driving around. He's got a tricycle, has a little, it's like the tricycle, and it has the big cooler on the front. And in part of the cooler, he has all the wonderful flavorful treats, the drumsticks. He has the bomb pops. He has all of those ice cream bars. And then the other side, he has all of your adult illegal drugs. Yeah, so the narcotics division has busted him for going around and being part of Cheech and Chong's nice creams or nice dreams.
Nice,
so, yeah,
awesome.
That's exactly.
I still remember those movies from back at 70s, 80s with the Up in Smoke or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Or
it's still Dave's not here, man. Still one of the best bits ever.
Yeah.
It's still fantastic. All right, your final choice this morning, and choose wisely. Is this cannibalism or a skateboarder named Wanda? I know it's difficult.
Should we build in the Jeopardy music to these situations when we have the ability to choose? I'm going to go with cannibalism.
Really? All righty. Wanda's a funny
Well, then
story.
because we have losers tomorrow.
Yes, we do. So is this cannibalism? This is a problem that the Royal Mail is having in Britain, specifically in Luton Town. They have kind of a problem there because they have some competition. You may know that traditional mail is, instead of like email and stuff, it's referred to, sir, as, what do we call it colloquially? The slow-moving mail that comes across just by post is called?
Mark.
No.
I'm so sorry. Snail mail.
Snail mail, yes. And that's the problem they're having in Luton Town. There are snails that are taking up residence in several post boxes and eating the mails inside.
What?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Is it cannibalism? When snails eat the snail mail, is that cannibalism? I just want to know. Now, the issue is these snails, and they've removed them several times from the post boxes around town, but the snails keep returning, but very slowly. They get inside, and what they're doing is they're eating the glue that holds the envelope closed. They, for some reason, have found out that is a decent food source. They like it, so they're slowly nibbling the mail and opening it up. So now they have messages taped on the post boxes in and around town that says, and it's very British, "Whilst you are welcome to continue using this post box, we wanted to mention that your letter may not arrive without some nibble marks around the edges." You have to read it that way when you do British accent.
God.
Yeah. So according to one visitor, one villager, he said some of the overhanging vegetation and things that are around the post boxes are probably some of the issue. He said he's talked to people about the snails for years, but everyone said they had time to deal with it. See what I did there? Yeah.
Bam.
So that's it. That is the end of today's You Choose the News. I cannot believe our luck. Yes, sir. As always, George is our perennial winner, and I'm a giant loser. And today, you can get 50% off Dr. Evil's Everything Pill. Yes, you have anxiety, weight loss, depression, ED, hair loss, leprosy, and more. Our doctors just believe that you're an idiot and you'll be convinced this pill will solve all your problems. Yes, you can get 50% off the Everything Pill today, and they'll give it to you for free if you mention the show because they feel sorry for you. Alrighty, sir. That's all I got. Back to you.
We've already got a text complaint here. It says, "I'd like to lodge a complaint. You Choose the News is advertised as a game show, yet there is no contest of any sort to be awarded a prize. Don't make me go to the FTC with this." And George always wins. Doesn't that seem a bit hinky?
The prize is the fact that you're listening.
I said no. I said, please do it. It will be great advertising.
That is true. That is fantastic. I look forward to all of the legal entanglements. Thank you, sir.
Speaking of that, a local publication actually referenced an interview we did with the mayor. And in the article itself, it gives no credit to you, me, or the show. It does reference 710 KNUS. So I will say it was the Denver Business Journal, but it does not give us the credit for all the heavy lifting that generated whatever the quote was they thought that was valuable. So that hurts. But at least that's different. 9 News doesn't even give us that. So, hey, listen, when we come back, I really want to start talking about this horrific event that took place in Maine. Get your thoughts on it. What does it mean here in terms of, are there any laws that can address these things, and what next? 303-696-1971. George Brauchler.
One at a restaurant, the other at a bowling alley, where video captured people running for safety.
Probably the hardest part, seeing just families pouring out of there, and knowing that happened in there while they were just probably trying to have a family night.
State police asked residents there and in the nearby cities of Auburn and Lisbon to stay indoors as they investigated throughout the night. Several schools in the area canceling classes Thursday.
I've been stomping these grounds since I was 19 years old, and I'm just overwhelmed.
Soon after the shootings, the Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office released these images of a suspect seen here holding a high-powered assault-style rifle. Police identified 40-year-old Robert Card as a person of interest in the shooting.
Card is considered armed and dangerous. If people see him, they should not approach Card or make contact with him in any way.
Auburn Mayor Jason Levesque says the community is in shock.
There's fear, there's panic. Of course, there's worry, understandable. I mean, this is an all hands on deck situation. So yeah, you can train for this, but you can never be completely prepared.
In Lewistown, Maine, I'm Gloria Pasmino.
That's Robert Card, age 40, is the person of interest. I said this in the 6 o'clock. At what point does a person become a person of interest versus a suspect? It's really a matter of having, in my opinion, some sort of reasonable suspicion about them having committed a crime. When you post a picture from a surveillance video of this guy roaming around the bowling alley with the rifle, where people were shot and killed, feels like you've crossed over person of interest to person who did it, or at least one of the persons who did it. Robert Carr, age 40, is alleged to have done this. He's on the run. I don't know what to expect out of this case, but there are things we already know about this guy, and this is part of this social media universe that we're in. The number of dead has ranged between 16 and 22, dozens and dozens. I think I'd heard up to 60 or more injured by the gunfire. That's tremendous. I had read an article at one point where they suspected his involvement in something that took place at the Walmart Supercenter, but it looks like at least now they've narrowed it down to these two places that are about, I would say, 10 minutes apart by car. And that is the bowling alley and this other diner place where he went. Now, what is remarkable about this guy, and we've seen this before in other cases, including cases that I've handled, it's not that this guy has just had fleeting brushes with mental illness. This is a guy who it looks like was on some type of an involuntary hold for a period of time because he had been saying things like, I want to go blow up the Army base, the Army Reserve base that is in Maine. Now, in this Daily Mail, and I recommend to you Daily Mail, they've just figured out a way to get as much good information as possible in their stories. I'm telling you, it's a go-to for a lot of these things that take place nationally and internationally. I don't know how they do it. They're just really good at it. And they've described this guy as an Army reservist, as also a highly skilled gunman. They put that in quotes, a person who apparently had been a trainer for firearms. And this is what it says. Army Reserve firearms instructor Robert Card is a person of interest. He's from Bowdoin. They're in a lockdown situation, like a shelter-in-place situation right now. They also said that he had previously, like I said, indicated his interest in doing some kind of harm or damage, like blowing up the Army Reserve base, and he had been grabbed up. But then he wasn't kept up. They cut him loose and put him back out on the street. Now, the question is, well, and I've said this at every one of these mass shootings, all the laws that we seem to try to get passed after these mass shootings are laws that would have zero impact on the actual crime they use as the launch pad for these changes in the laws. So, for instance, not a single thing that we have done in changing the laws since July 20th, 2012, in my opinion, would have changed July 20th, 2012. That's the Aurora Theater Massacre. There are no changes in the laws that we have had that would have changed May 7th, 2019. That's STEM. There are no changes in the laws that we have made honestly, since Columbine that I think would have impacted Columbine. Other than that, we got rid of the ability to make a straw purchase at the state level. That's a legit change in the law. And in fact, in my opinion, a necessary one. Robin Anderson, who was the then girlfriend of Klebold, had gone and purchased a long rifle for them that was definitely used in this. But I'm telling you, they had enough firepower and other things at their disposal, long rifle or not, they were going through with this shooting. That was not the only weapon that they had. So nothing that I can think of. But here we're at this interesting place where this guy not only had demonstrated mental illness through these threats, but documented and acted upon mental illness. I mean, he had said at one point that he had been hearing voices when he'd spent 2 weeks, just this past summer, 2 weeks in a mental health facility. Now, there's more information that needs to come out about that. Here's going to be what the limitations are. The limitations are going to be that HIPAA still applies. That doesn't go away. There's still other privacy laws in place. We don't just get to know everything about this guy's mental health past simply because he's gone and conducted a massacre and a mass murder. But what information is out there already on the interwebs is that this dude had been mentally ill. And I think we need to know why he was cut loose after 2 weeks. And we need to know, and this is a question that Billy and I talked about, and I've done a little bit of research, Bill has too, on whether or not having demonstrated mental illness, is there a provision in the law, not dissimilar from what we call the red flag law here in Colorado, that might have intervened? Interesting what you find about that. Some other things in this Daily Mail article, and it's just very interesting. He has a Twitter account. It's now suspended, so you don't get to see all the stuff I'm going to talk to you about. But things like he had liked a bunch of posts by several prominent conservatives like DJT, Tucker, and Dinesh. It's interesting that one of the posts that he liked from Dinesh D'Souza read, "Ban all assault weapons, ? Oh, and of course, now the page is just refreshed and kicked me right out of my thing here. Sweet goodness. I'll find it again, I'm sure, during a break. The page literally refreshed right here. Here it is, right here. Sweet goodness. Ban assault weapons, ? Well, cars kill more people than guns do, but we blame the drivers. We don't ban large or fast cars. We understand that cars, like guns, don't act by themselves. The blame lies with the people who operate these mechanical devices. Common sense 101. He liked that post. That's kind of ironic / scary, eerie to hear stuff like that. Now, you and I both know as they continue to find out more about this guy, they will describe him as a right-wing or conservative-leaning. They're going to do it. You know it's going to happen because for the left, the politics matter when it's not people from the left. They downplayed it with the guy that shot up Scalise. Remember Steve Scalise shot out there on that softball field a few years ago? They downplayed his I'm a big Bernie Sanders guy. But this thing, I promise you, it's going to be right-wing guy, conservative-leaning guy, liked all these posts. That's going to be a big issue. That to me isn't the story. The story here is locked up for 2 weeks over mental illness stuff. Guy said he was hearing voices. That's likely a telltale sign of a delusion. A delusion is part and parcel of what we might call a psychosis. And that is believing things exist, facts exist that don't. Fake facts, false facts, even in the face of contrary information. So this guy claims he's hearing voices. I'm not an expert in mental health. I am a law guy who has spent a long time swimming around certain portions of the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, both 4th and 5th editions, in preparation for that Aurora Theater case. This is in the schizophrenia spectrum types of things that you would consider. If this guy is having this delusion, that is a thing that makes you start looking in that part of the DSM-5 where you're looking at schizophrenia, schizophreniform, schizophrenia spectrum disorder. There's a whole bunch of them, and this could feed into that. So the question is, with that going around, and by the way, even anyone that has schizophrenia, it doesn't mean you're a risk to yourself or others. That's not how it works, and I don't want anybody to come away from this conversation feeling like, hey, are you saying that everybody that has mental illness should be locked up? No. And in no way am I even hinting at that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that this guy has these things, has mental illness, and it had risen to the point where either by self-selection or community intervention, he was taken out of his life for 2 weeks to have it addressed. Can you then be released back into the community? Yes, of course. But you got to believe it's with the proper supervision, most likely some type of medication, ongoing therapy. We just don't know what this guy was told to do and whether he did it. What we do know is dude was locked up for 2 weeks for mental illness just a few months ago. And now he's out on the street having obtained, or maybe he'd already had it, a rifle. And my guess is it would be what the mainstream media would describe as an assault rifle. It's just a high-powered rifle capable of a high cyclic rate of fire that has a decent magazine capacity. And when I say decent, I mean, I don't mean that as a complimentary thing. I mean like significant, 20, 30. We just don't know. So the question is, was there something in Maine that could have stopped this? Some law. So I went to all the websites of the people that hate guns. And one of them is called Everytown. You may have heard that. It's a Bloomberg funded and backed organization. Every time something like this happens, they show up and they rate the states in terms of their laws. Colorado, in terms of gun laws, is ranked 12th best, if there's such a thing, 12th best in the United States. And the things that they cite, Everytown, are they require background checks on all gun sales. They have an extreme risk law. That's the red flag law. And they have laws that keep guns away from domestic abusers. And by the way, the federal law exists under the Lautenberg Amendment of the Gun Control Act of, I think it was 1968. That exists at the federal level anyway, but the state has it as well. So they say we're number 12. Maine, on the other hand, way up there. If you haven't seen Maine on a map, I'm not slighting you for not knowing where Maine is. It's the upper northeast corner of the United States. That's on my bucket list of, I want to go to that state. I haven't been to that state. I've been all over New England and the Northeast, but not that. In fact, if you fall off of Maine into the water, I think you are almost 20 miles away from the line for Canada or Greenland or whatever it is. You are way, way up there. What's that?
Also, you can become a Stephen King
Yeah,
character.
that's right. Billy says you can become a Stephen King character if you're in Maine. They're ranked 25th. So they're dead set in the middle there on that. And the reason Everytown says that they're ranked 25th and we're ranked 12th, they're ranked 25th, is that they don't require background checks on all gun sales. That's their big one. Now, they do have some type of an extreme risk law, but it's very, very different from ours. And as I read it to you, or at least the provisions of it, I'll describe it to you. The words are crazy. And their website looks like it's about 15 years too old. Like it looks like my son made this website that contains the law on it. But the gist of it is this: the only people that can seek and they call it a yellow flag law, not a red flag, yellow flag or yellow paper law. The only people that can seek it are law enforcement officers. Now let's just stop right there. That's very different than Colorado's law, as you know, because the original version of this thing that passed said law enforcement can do it, or certain very limited members of a person's life, like their roommate, their domestic partner or spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, that kind of thing, brothers, sisters. They have to have ongoing and pretty intimate contact with this person, in part because at the time that we passed that, we said, we want people who, if they're not law enforcement, we want people who can say, this person is different. This person is going through changes. This person is posing a risk to themselves or others. That's my opinion of having known them for that long. And so that was the original law. As you know, for reasons that are related to Club Q. And if you remember what happened down in Club Q, that freak show mass murderer, who should be getting the needle, by the way, but of course we don't have the death penalty anymore. Thank you, Governor Polis. And we're waiting on the feds to make their decision. That freak show mass murderer guy had previously had the police called out on him. And sure enough, a sheriff's office from El Paso County showed up. They took this guy without pulling the trigger. And you know what happens. If they shoot this guy, then of course people are like, oh my God, the cops are just killing more people. So they take him without pulling the trigger. Fantastic. They grab up every gun he has. He's charged with felony charges. They're in court. The guns, by the way, the cops still own all the guns, still have all the guns. And but they never go seek a red flag order. Instead, there are bond conditions. There are restraining order conditions that exist all the way through the pendency of his case until a time that the court in El Paso County dismisses the case. And I don't want to rehash why that took place, but all of those things happen. And what we know from Club Q, and you remember we had an interview with the great DA out of the 4th down there, Michael Allen, those weapons that he used to massacre those innocent people at Club Q, those weapons were not legally obtained. They were not obtained through a system where red flag would have made a difference. It doesn't matter. The left goes nuts. A.G. Weiser and the rest of these people pull their hair out. These things have to happen. These sheriffs, these sheriffs that are empowered to find these things, they're not embracing it. They're not seeking it at every opportunity that they have. So last year we expanded the law so that Phil Weiser can also seek a red flag protection order. He doesn't have to know anything about you. He doesn't have to have an intimate relationship with you. If your name shows up in a report and he has some sneaking suspicion that you pose a risk to yourself or others, he or someone from his massive government-funded law firm can go and seek a protection order against you. Now, teachers can go seek protection orders against who now? It's got to be only the 18. Now it can't even be the 18-year-olds. You can't obtain a firearm under the age of 21 in the state of Colorado. Who are they seeking protection orders against? The ruffian, disruptive 16-year-old who can't legally possess one to begin with? Nonetheless, teachers, educators are now authorized to do it. So we have a broad number of people. I presume in the next version of events, next year, they'll amend the law to say that anybody, based on any social media post anywhere on the planet Earth, can seek a protection order against you that would prohibit you from exercising your Second Amendment rights. That's my best guess. Nonetheless, fast forward to Maine. Maine, it can only be law enforcement. But here's the other interesting, super interesting distinction, that it can only happen with a medical practitioner who must first, and this is a quote, assess whether the person presents a likelihood of foreseeable harm. So it's not just that law enforcement wants to do this thing and they're like, hey, dude's super scary, or we ran into him or her in the context of this event and we know that they have weapons, or we worry that it's not just that. That's not good enough. In our system, that would be good enough for law enforcement to go to the court, seek an initial restraining order, a temporary extreme risk protection order, and that triggers this other 2-week thing that takes place and it becomes permanent for a year and all that other stuff. In Maine, can't do that. Got to have a medical practitioner say it. Now, for many out there, if you listen to that, you would say, okay, I still don't like the ERPO thing, but at least that's more protection for due process. At least it's more than just a disgruntled former girlfriend or some politically motivated attorney general who says, I think you shouldn't have guns. There's actually a medical practitioner, presumably one that has some training in the area, to say, guy presents a likelihood of foreseeable harm. And by the way, when I say guy, yes, it could be he or her, or whatever pronoun of your choice, but let's be honest. For mass murderers in America, and they almost all happen here, this is a white male thing, right? This isn't a woman thing. It's not that they haven't done it or they can't. And STEM is an example, the transgender male. There's also Mountain Vista. Don't get me wrong. There are some exceptions. But by and large, it's a white dude thing. It just by and large, it's a white guy thing, statistically speaking. So, but it's almost entirely a guy thing as well. So when a guy is experiencing some sort of mental illness thing, it's not enough for the cops to go to court. They have to get a medical provider to say that. So it's interesting that they have more due process provisions in place, but they act as hurdles. That's not my word. That's the Maine Attorney General's words. They say it's a hindrance. They say it's a hurdle to getting this. So the big question is there anything that could have existed law-wise that would, at least at this point, have made a difference? We can talk ban on assault weapons. We can talk about that. But what we don't know is how this guy obtained the weapon. We know that an assault weapons ban would have made no difference in Club Q because that dude didn't obtain his weapons legally or through that process. We know that wouldn't have been an issue. But in this particular case, aside from that, would Colorado's version of a red flag law come into play, and would it have made a difference? And if it would have made a difference in that case, does it change your opinion about it here in Colorado? There's still so much more to find out about this. But, I mean, what's the answer here? Because this has happened again, now in a place that doesn't know this level of violence and this level of homicide. What now do we do? Is this just, Billy has said this to me a bunch of times, is this just the cost of admission? Is this just, hey, if you're in America, you've just signed up for this risk and suck it, because there's nothing we're willing to do that might possibly infringe in some way at all on the Second Amendment, even if it means potentially preventing these kinds of acts. It's important we have this conversation. I also leave open the possibility that we come to find out that somebody tried to intervene and the court said no, or this guy was self-admitted and that means he let himself go. I don't know. Should this have been expanded to mental health providers or medical providers? Would that have made a difference in this case? You know, Maine is going to go through that after they bury the dead and they deal with the aftermath, and the ripple effects will go on forever. They'll go that. Maybe generations from now, it'll just be an anecdote. It'll just be a story like the Boston Massacre or the Boston Tea Party, some historic reference point of something that happened in the past. But for the next couple generations, this thing's going to live on. Lewiston is now going to be like Aurora. Aurora, for all the great things it stands for and that it's accomplished. When you talk about the Aurora Massacre, everybody knows what you're talking about. Listen, let's cut away for a break. We're getting texts in here. I want to read these, but I want to have this honest conversation with you. If you are a pure Second Amendment, you can pry this from my cold, dead hands person, talk to me about this and be honest with me. Does this change your opinion at all? Does it make you think there has to be some solution out there? Or, and be honest, is this just, hey, this is going to happen, right? We can't stop every evil person out there. And because of that, we're just going to have to do our best to protect ourselves. But this is just going to happen. Is this the road to the new norm in the United States? 303-696-1971. George Brauchler on The George Show. Before I cut away, though, I just noticed this is by the way, this right here that I'm holding up that people can't really see because I'm flapping around. Billy, this thing right here, and it's looking healthy. That's all I can say. I talked to Stefan yesterday about the fact that Stefan's dentist is a murderer. My dentists are not. My dentists are awesome. And I was trying to encourage him to try Twin Aspen Dental Center. You don't go see a dentist just because they're not a murderer. But that's certainly now in Stefan's life a box that has to be checked. Not so in mine. Instead, I get to pick the best dentists in the area based on not just competency, expertise, experience. They have the best staff around. These are some of the friendliest, nicest people. They create a stress-free environment. These are people that care about you beyond, hey, it's just another mouth and a chair, cha-ching. It's not like that, man. They remember your stories. They remember your family. You talk about that. They're in no rush. I've never been rushed by Shiloh through any of this stuff. It's always been a product of, hey, glad to have you back in. How are things going? How are the kids? You have that kind of conversation. It's easy. It's smooth. And then they break out all of this high-tech, super fancy equipment that does all the stuff that tells them that your teeth need help or they don't for that visit. If you're looking to upgrade something in your life, dentistry is one of those things. You have likely, I hope you have an appointment every 6 months with your dentist. If you don't, you need to get on that and start with Twin Aspen Dental. But if you have a dentist and you're like, yeah, I like them. I mean, it's nice. It's friendly. I've been going there a long time. Take a knee. You're not abandoning them. Not yet. Just take a knee for one time. Call Twin Aspen Dental Center at 303-841-7466. 303-841-7466. Make an appointment. Go down and see them at their awesome new facility down there at Stroh and Parker. You can get to it northeast, south, or west. Go in there and check it out. And my guess is almost every one of you will be like, I'm staying. I'm staying. I like these people. I like I feel good about this. TwinAspenDentalCenter.com. They're the bomb. Once they all figure out how to deal with the new world, which is Dr. Snyder coming back from maternity leave on her first of what I have begged her to produce is many more tax-paying babies. But we'll get them back in the studio here. I love the stories with them. But it's Twin Aspen Dental Center. Check them out. When we come back, it's you, me, the many texts. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Have the courage to stand up and say what you're thinking. I'm sorry this happened, but you can't stop evil. No changes can or should be made. Or if you have an idea, let's start talking about it here. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Got a text here from our buddy from Nebraska, Jacqueline, and it says, I'm just reading it out loud so that Jacqueline can hear it. Love it when you talk like Gabby Hayes. I said Hayes, and then she responded with, who is Hayes and what is it? I'm like, yeah, you said talk like Gabby Hayes. I'm not sure who Gabby Hayes is. Am I missing something? That's, by the way, pretty self-evident that I am missing something. But I mean, in this particular thing, I feel like an idiot because I don't know the answer to that question. Here's some of the texts that have come in. And call and tell us this. What do we do here, if anything? Is there an answer? I mean, I want to believe that the law can step in and try to get between a person who shouldn't have a gun and that gun. I want to believe that. There aren't a lot of vehicles to do that. Right now, I will tell you, the 72-hour hold that we have, the mental health hold, that bar is incredibly high, and that ain't going to get it done. There are too many people who are a danger to themselves and others walking around among us, and maybe their friends and family know, maybe law enforcement runs into them, but that have access to firearms. And there's got to be a way we can do that that's still true to the Second Amendment and have due process. But dang, man, dude's in a hospital saying he hears voices and wants to blow up an Army Reserve base not years ago, but like a few months ago. And there's nothing that was done. There's nothing that could be done. Someone texts in and says, this is why we need to bring back the large mental hospitals that can take care of people long term. That does not require law enforcement involvement and thousands of hoops to jump through. I do think there's something to the fact that we made asylums a dirty word and we got rid of them. And because of that, and whatever abuses existed, those should have been addressed. It's not an institutional failure like the institution's to blame. It's usually people or the way it's run. Nonetheless, I'm also skeptical of the government having a lower bar to be able to point their finger at Billy and say, you seem nuts to us. We're going to take you out of your life. I still want there to be a significant bar, but is there nothing that can be done here? Are we just trapped in this? Well, every once in a while, someone's going to grab one of these rifles that we don't want banned and just light up a bunch of innocents. And, the only answer is, oh, here it is. Gabby Hayes with an old cowboy star with Roy Rogers. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, he was like, Gabby Hayes, if you're familiar with Toy Story.
Yep, I am.
And Stinky Pete. That's Gabby Hayes. I
talk like Gabby Hayes?
I don't think so. I think it has more to do with your personal hygiene. Here's the thing. Now, you were talking though that is there nothing that we can do? And I would counter that and say it's not that there's nothing we can do. It's there's nothing that we want to do. And that's the dichotomy that we have in our country right now, is we stand around during events like this and say, oh my gosh, what can be done? This is a horrible tragedy. Yet we are the only place on the planet where this happens in the developed world on a routine basis. And by routine, I mean weekly. And so
why is that? Why do you think that is?
It is because of our culture and our gun culture and how we have decided to deal with firearms. And we've talked about this before. I believe that we are not adequately addressing either the firearm or the culture of firearms in our country. And the example I would give you is that, again, I agree that a firearm is a tool, and it is the person pulling the trigger that is the problem. The issue we have is we seem to have a reticence to prevent the people that are going to act out on those feelings from getting the tool to do it efficiently. That's the disconnect that we're having.
Are you beating around the bush of we need to get rid of the assault rifle thing?
For me, that would be a strong step forward. I think it would curtail what we're seeing now. Whether or not we want to talk about
curtail.
We would have fewer incidents of mass shootings, and especially ones on this scale. If we
the scale I can appreciate, but why do you think we'd have less instances? Why would the rifle be easier or harder to procure than the handgun, making any difference? Like, why wouldn't this guy have just done it with semi-automatic handguns?
A couple of differences. One being, and again, I lean into the gun culture. Our gun culture over the last 2 to 3 decades has shifted from a hunting culture into a personal safety, kill the bad guy culture. And so when you're looking at threats that is the weapon you are going to choose. The number one selling weapon in America, I believe, is the AR-15 style assault rifle. There are many iterations, and I understand it's a incorrect way to address it, but as a category, that's our number one sales. Not shotguns, not handguns. It's that. And when we are putting that many instruments on the street, that is going to be the primary weapon someone is going to use to act out, simply because it is the most efficient killing machine in that situation. It is, I can load more.
So you think in the absence of that, then folks the guys wouldn't just turn to handguns and go do this?
No, I believe there are some that would, but I believe there's some that wouldn't.
Then what would they
we
do?
can deal with it. What do you mean?
Like if
I got the phone here in a second.
I got it.
You can hear
that. And thank you for people calling in. I guess I'll ask the question of the audience. So let's say we ban the assault rifle, and I do not support that. Okay, I don't support that as an answer to this, because I am firmly committed to the idea that it is the person that we should be addressing and not the weapon. And
they hung up on me.
They did?
Yeah.
Well, it did say Bill.
Yeah. Probably.
I'm sure you answered it with, hey, gun nut, or something like that. But so, Billy, what do these people then do? They're inclined to want to go visit evil and harm on someone. And they're like, well, but I don't have the rifle and I only have the handguns. I guess I'll just cut my wrists. I mean, what are they doing?
Well, it depends on, again, how this gets us a little bit deeper into, again, how we are dealing with the access that we have to firearms. That we have part of this country that believes the safest thing in the world is that all of us would be armed. That would equal a very safe society if everybody walking around there had a gun. And I understand that. I understand that perspective, but I disagree with the premise. And this is where I get into the idea of how we are dealing and how we are letting people own guns. That if I brought a product, and we've talked about this off the air, I don't think we've done on the air. If I brought a product to market, if I was going to market a brand new product that I was going to offer for sale at stores across the country, and this product was designed to kill humans as quickly as possible, what sort of rules, regulations, things would we put on that kind of a product to make sure that certain people don't get a hold of it? What would we do? But that's what we have. The firearm, the way it is created, it's not for sport. It's not for entertainment. Anything else that everybody ascribes those emotions to. It is a tool that is designed specifically to kill a human being as quickly as possible. And when I'm talking about the ARs, shotguns, different. That is a different designation, a different design. But both of those tools are designed to kill as quickly and efficiently as possible. We need to be honest about that. And then we need to be honest dealing with what does that mean in the larger ramifications in our society. Rather than viewing this as a firearm, as our tool that is our birthright, we need to view it as a consumer product that is designed to kill. Because if you're making a gun that does not kill efficiently, your gun sucks. Get out of the market. I don't want to take the guns, but I don't believe that we are having an honest conversation.
That does speak to the idea that, listen, there are classic firearms, there are historic firearms. Yes. All of those end up getting exempted from these other laws too. But I understand if you distill it down to just, hey, what's the intent of this thing? I think you'd have to add on, it's not the intent to kill as many innocent people as possible. Its intention is if it's going to be used to kill, and many people never kill another. In fact, 99.99% of people never kill another human being with a firearm. It has a billion other uses. But if we're going to get to intention,
I disagree. It does not have a billion other uses.
It does.
Sure it does. No, it doesn't. What is the other use of a firearm?
How about for sport? How about because folks like to collect them? How about target shooting? How about?
But again, that is delivering a bullet as efficiently as possible into the target.
No doubt.
Now, again, when you're doing skeet shooting, etc., you're practicing on shooting an animal, which is the bird that is flying through the sky. And if your gun does not kill that skeet as efficiently as possible, your gun sucks. No. Don't sit there and say, honest, with respect, don't say that this firearm has a billion other uses. Its intended use is to kill.
Not when I buy it.
That is the intent.
Not when I buy it. Like,
let's say you're not using it right.
Then you're not using it right. If I go buy it, like I'm a big skeet shooter, my intention is I want to win tournaments in skeet. I have shot skeet.
You're misinterpreting what I said. I did not say your intention. The intention of the tool is to kill as efficiently as possible. You may intend to use it differently, but it doesn't have a billion others. An intention is to kill.
The
That's
intention
how
is
it is designed.
to shoot the target that it's aimed at as
And
efficiently as possible.
And if it does not kill the target, it's an inefficient weapon. Why are you going to go out there and take a shotgun out there that's not going to kill the bird? Are you going to take a long rifle? You're going to take a 30-06 that's not going to kill the deer.
I'll take
no,
whatever,
you're not.
I'll take whatever's
you're
best
not.
for the environment.
Yes, whatever will deliver the killing blow as efficiently as possible.
But
thank you. That's exactly what I said.
I'm not killing clays, right? I'm shooting the clays, and they may be simulating the birds. But the idea that
But that's how it's created. That's the intention of the tool.
But that's not the intention of the tools.
Yes,
I
it
want
is.
you to go shoot people with this. That may be.
Hang on. I made back in our, if we rewind our conversation, I said back in the early part, the ARs are the shooting of the people. The shotguns are the shooting of the birds. It is still efficient killing, because if I can't take down that dove efficiently with my shotgun sucks and I need a new one. I need to change shot load. I need to change something.
Unlike everything else, and how do you square that with the Second Amendment?
I know. Difficult. Here's the issue, that in this country, as we have decided to interpret the Second Amendment, we've decided to ignore how it is written. We've decided to ignore English. And we've decided to recently, and we've had this discussion off the air, to apply an intention to the Second Amendment that our courts never saw for hundreds and hundreds of years in this country until recently. We've decided it imparts an individual right to own a gun. That was never the court's designation for hundreds of years. That was never the designation of the founding fathers, but we've decided that. We also ignored the basic English. The English, and I'll get to the phone in a second. The English is very, very simplistic in the Second Amendment. It is a simple sentence that has a dependent clause and an independent clause. And that dependent clause, like it does in English, puts restrictions on the independent clause. That is not up for debate. Now, we can disagree about what you think it means, but the fact that
we can't debate about what I think it means. I know what I think it means.
I know, but you can. But many people are interpreting it wrong, including our courts, because of basic English.
For hundreds of years, we didn't have a constitutional right to abort a baby, and all of a sudden they invented that out of some penumbra junk that they invented out of a combination of amendments.
However, there were rules and laws that did designate and talk about abortion well before we had Roe versus Wade. There were rules and laws all over the country.
All
over the country.
Then all of a sudden we just said, oh, by the way, you can't put all these rules and laws and these restrictions on it because it's a right.
They didn't sit there and say, aha, abortion is now in Amendment 3517-12 in the Constitution. What they did is they rolled it into the right of privacy. Now we can discuss whether or not that was the right way to do it.
There's no right to privacy in any constitutional amendment.
But that's how they rolled it into, is the individual right to privacy.
Let's be honest, they invented it.
I disagree with them inventing it. I think that some of it was misapplied and misinterpreted, but I disagree with them
only because the word privacy
it.
Existed back then and it was not used.
Again, there were rules and laws that designated abortions and covered them. It wasn't as if Roe versus Wade passed and everyone went, aha, abortion is now free, everybody run. But we're getting way afield. Where the conversation is.
We're only going afield because you're saying, hey, the Second Amendment has been misinterpreted. And I'm saying, hey, look, the Supreme Court has gone out of its way to invent things that have no word basis for them in the Constitution.
Yes.
The interpretation of the Second Amendment, really not that bad.
I understand that. Well, see, again, your opinion is it's really not that bad. I think that it is much more egregious. And as we've talked about, courts and everyone listening will agree with this, regardless of your political position. Courts are not divine oracles. They are fallible and they are human, and they make things that are correct decisions and things that are wrong decisions. We can debate what those are, and we can have opinions on those, and those have changed, and we've seen precedent rewritten, especially in the case of Roe versus Wade. And we've seen precedent rewritten, especially in the case of gun ownership, because again, the history for years and years and years had to deal with that dependent clause dealing with militias, and now we've decided to ignore that.
Dude, we got to cut away for a break, but I want to keep this conversation going. Let me say this, and there's a nice segue into this because you brought part of this up in terms of the use of the firearm. There are folks out there, and some of them have texted in, that are going to say, wait a minute. And I was going to ask this question of Billy if we'd had time. And that was, it's interesting so far, we haven't heard of a single person that encountered this guy that was armed and returned fire. And we've heard story after story after story about that taking place in other settings. And so some are going to say, wait, I don't know what the answer is to keep a gun out of that dude's hands. We're never going to get to a perfect scenario there. But I know that if I'm armed and I'm trained and I have an ability to stop evil stuff like this, I could have done something there. Maybe somebody could have done something there.
Let's talk about that.
We will, but I want to use that.
No, let's put a pin in that, because that means the solution is crossfire. That's interesting.
I'm not sure that that's the answer either. But if you're interested in defending yourself, and I am, by the way, one sure thing to do that you can do to exercise your Second Amendment rights is to go to the Tanner Gun Show this weekend. It's out there in unincorporated Arapahoe County, right at the fairgrounds. Pretty awesome location, by the way. Free parking all the time. Starts tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday. Buy a ticket for one day, get access all the days. Have the conversation with the people there. Talk to them about what's best for you. If you're getting it for sport, they'll have it. If you're getting it for self-defense, ask these experts there, all licensed gun dealers. Ask them, like, what do I need to do? Like, what's the best thing for my situation? They'll have it, and they'll have answers for you. You also get prices up to 30% less than the big box stores. There's really no good reason to not spend some time this weekend driving out to the Arapahoe Fairgrounds. 9 to 5 on Saturday, 3 to 7 tomorrow, Sunday 10 to 4. Tickets good all 3 days. Check them out at tannergunshow.com. That's tannergunshow.com. We'll continue this conversation with the seconds we have left when we come back. And then at 8 o'clock hour, we'll have Jack Phillips, Assistant Attorney. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll 'em out shelves. Your clutter transformation experts create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll 'em out shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly. To clear the clutter, contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll 'em Out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today. Say goodbye to
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Got about a minute before we tap out here. Off air, Billy came in and conceded that I'm right and he's wrong. And that never happens. We didn't capture it on air. It sounds a little bit differently than how I phrased it. But in essence, I've won the debate. Billy is fully on board with selling all kinds of weapons to people. I honestly, folks, this issue isn't going to go away. We may revisit it, but we're going to keep updating you on what's going on in Maine once they apprehend the shooter. I'm secretly hopeful he's gone. And I mean, like he took his own life. I'd like to see him have moved on and not to put these people through anything more. And by these people, I mean the community and the victims of this horrific crime. There is no death penalty in Maine. There hasn't been a death penalty in Maine since 1887. So the only thing that can come from this is some ridiculously jacked up, tortured trial where the only possible outcome is that this guy spend life in prison. I'd rather see him spend eternity in hell. And that's why I hope that he has taken his own life, or maybe, I don't know, some other good Samaritan we haven't come across has gunned him down or something. I don't know. But we're going to come back. We're going to be joined by Jack the Baker and his attorney. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court case. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brauchler back with you here. It's hour 3 of 4 right here. We are halfway through the Thursday show. At 10 o'clock, of course, Charlie Kirk takes over. We go DP, Dennis Prager at 11, Seb Gorka at 1, and then live and local right back here where I'm sitting right now with Deb Flora from 3 to 4. 4 to 7, get them while they're hot. We only have, 6 more shows of the Stephen Tubbs farewell tour. And I am almost certain, based on the interview we did yesterday in studio, that he's going to extend that by a couple months. Like, he is having such a good time. People are returning his call that have blown him off for decades, in large part just to be able to say goodbye. And so if you haven't had a chance to listen to the show, it is long. It's the kind of farewell Rush Limbaugh hoped that he would get. But nonetheless, 6 more shows, asterisk, right, until it gets extended a couple months. I don't know. Hey, listen, if there is such a thing as a frequent flyer card for appearances in court, and I don't mean in criminal court, I mean in regular human being civil court, this guy will have a punch card bringing up on the line right now. Hero of sorts, and I say that because this guy has been subjected to more stuff that has resulted in, at least so far, the U.S. Supreme Court, more freedom than a lot of folks do. It's Jack Phillips and Jake Warner from Alliance Defending Freedom. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having us.
Jack, thanks. First off, by the way, do you have a punch card for all the times you've been drug into court to defend your faith and all this other stuff?
I don't know. You probably ought to ask my lawyer.
Yeah, Jake, do you get something like give you special parking when you get to the courthouse? Like, oh, it's the Jack Phillips case again.
Well, Jack's been in court over a decade now, and we're hoping that at this next stop, we'll finally be able to get justice for Jack and get him out of court for good.
Well, let's set the stage for listeners out there. Folks may think they remember what happened in the past, but in the past, Jack came to prominence in a way that isn't related to his fantastic baking, because somebody drug him into the Civil Rights Commission. I think it was at the state level. And maybe, Jake, you could describe sort of the procedural history of what happened there. And then, Jack, I'll ask you, how do you get sucked right back into this system?
Sure. Back in 2012, 2 men came into Jack's shop and requested a custom cake celebrating a same-sex wedding. And while Jack serves everyone, he cannot express every message through his custom cakes. And this was a message that violated his faith. So he politely declined while offering to sell the men other items in his shop or to create another custom cake expressing a message that does not violate his conscience. Well, about a month or two later, the 2 men filed a complaint with the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. And after an investigation, the commission charged Jack with violating state law. And ultimately, the Colorado court punished Jack for declining to create a message that goes against his beliefs. And Jack had to appeal his case all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, where he won a 7-2 victory in 2018. And there, the U.S. Supreme Court held that Colorado officials had discriminated against Jack along the way, comparing him to Nazis and slaveholders, and then also treating him worse than other cake artists. In Jack's first case, a religious man asked 3 cake artists to create custom cakes bearing Bible verses, but those cake artists declined, citing their objection to the message. But instead of prosecuting those 3 cake artists like they did Jack, they said, no, you have the freedom to decline to express messages you disagree with. And then the Supreme Court said, look, you're discriminating against Jack, and that's wrong.
Well, I think the biggest thing to come out of that Supreme Court opinion, in fact, let's back up and say this, though. From the moment those 2 guys walked into Jack's shop until the Supreme Court came back and sort of freed him from the oppressive Civil Rights Commission ruling that they had, how much time had elapsed? How much of Jack's life got caught up in this?
It was 6 years from the request to the Supreme Court win.
The other thing that I found fascinating that came out of this was the Civil Rights Commission, at least as it existed back then, was exposed as really a kangaroo court in the way that they approached this thing. I mean, it was shocking that there were even 2 dissenting votes in that opinion based on the record that had been made, the transcripts, all that stuff. Really pretty crazy. But you would think that would be the end, right? Like, everybody goes back to doing their own thing. Jack goes back to baking cakes. What happened? And Jack, maybe you talk about this. Well, what happened that got you into the position you're in now?
Well, the United States Supreme Court reprimanded the Colorado Civil Rights Commission because of their impermissible hostility to me and my faith. And they explained how that happened and how they had accused me, the Civil Rights Commission had accused me of my falling on my faith as a way to run my business as tantamount to the slavery and the Holocaust, comparing my decision not to create a message to slavery and the Holocaust. They said, you have to be neutral, you're not, and they weren't. And then 3 weeks later, we had another complaint that had been filed with the Civil Rights Commission, and they took it up, and we went from there. This case was a cake that somebody asked us, an attorney here in Colorado, asked us to create a cake that was pink on the inside and blue on the outside. We were told that those colors were expressive and symbolic of changing from a man to a woman, and this cake was to celebrate that. So when we told this attorney that that was not a message that we could express, but we would create other custom cakes or even another pink and blue cake for another event that didn't express that message, that person had filed a complaint with the commission, and the commission took it forward, subsequently dismissed it. But now we're in court again with a civil lawsuit where this attorney is suing us in civil court.
Well, let's talk about that. In terms of timing, Jack, did that attorney come into your shop to ask for that cake 3 weeks after the Supreme Court decision? Like that decision comes down and then they showed up? Or had they come in during the pendency of the case?
The day that the United States Supreme Court announced that they were going to hear our case, it was a pretty chaotic day. KNUS was here, all kinds of media, all kinds of things going on. And that was the day that this attorney chose to call us and ask for that cake. And so that was the date that the Supreme Court agreed to announce that they agreed to hear our case. And then after we got our decision 6 months later, then 3 weeks later, the commission, that's when they took up the complaint and said that they had probable cause to sue and then, take us back to court.
Well, Jake, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but that timing smells fishy to me. The idea that the opinion comes out and right after that, there's a call from an attorney asking for a cake that they could have just asked for a blue and pink cake. And my guess is Jack makes it because he has no dang idea. And they could have gone on after the fact and said, here's what the cake means. Who cares? But they went out of their way to highlight for Jack, by the way, we're doing this, in my opinion, this is my opinion, clearly as an attempt to create this sort of litigation. Jake, am I way off base here?
No, it was definitely a setup. This attorney had actually contacted Jack long before that day in 2017. In 2012, right after news of Jack's first case appeared in the media, this attorney emailed Jack twice, calling him a bigot and a hypocrite, and then followed Jack's case a number of years before calling him, not coincidentally, on the same day the U.S. Supreme Court decided to hear Jack's first case. And then the attorney called back and requested a custom cake depicting Satan smoking marijuana, admittedly to correct the errors of Jack's thinking. So this was clearly a setup, and it's evidence of what we've been seeing over the past 10 years. Government officials and activists misusing the law to try to punish people that they simply disagree with. But Jack, for over 10 years, has been advocating for his right and the right of all Americans to express what they believe without fear of government punishment. And we're hopeful that he's finally going to get justice here at the Colorado Supreme Court.
Jack, why did the Civil Rights Commission say that they upheld it this time? I mean, hadn't they learned their lesson from what took place before, or was the lesson they learned that, we just procedurally did it wrong? Like, we can still get to the same outcome. We just got to follow a different procedure.
I think that's a question that would be better answered by Jake, more of a legal.
Yeah, well, after the commission came after Jack again, we actually filed a federal lawsuit to stop the commission from going after Jack, citing the U.S. Supreme Court's recent decision. And during that lawsuit, new evidence came up of the commission's ongoing hostility against Jack and his state. And when that evidence surfaced, the commission dismissed its complaint against Jack, and the attorney bringing the complaint started over with a new lawsuit in state civil court.
And so this is no longer a Colorado Civil Rights Commission thing. And by the way, did they provide that letter? You know how, and again, I'm not a civil rights practitioner in terms of going to court for it, but did they have to give you the right to sue letter? Like you either got to go to OCR, you got to go to the CRC, and then if they decline to pursue it, then they just give you is that what happened here?
Well, here the commission had already brought a complaint. So there was active administrative law litigation going on. So what they did was they issued an order dismissing the case with prejudice. And what that signaled is that the attorney actually needs to appeal that dismissal up to the Colorado Court of Appeals before suing Jack in civil court to comply with the law. But the attorney didn't do that. So we shouldn't even have this third lawsuit.
So how'd they get around that, man? How do they procedurally get around that flaw?
Well, that's an issue that the Colorado Supreme Court is going to address in Jack's most recent case. Not only is it going to address the constitutional issue, but whether this lawsuit should even be filed at all because the attorney failed to appeal the case.
So did you got to the Court of Appeals, right? I would think there was a decision in January or February or something that was a ruling by the Court of Appeals against you guys.
That's right. So that did not happen in the administrative case. But once the attorney filed the civil lawsuit, we had a trial, and the trial court punished Jack for declining to create a message that goes against his faith. We appealed that decision to the Colorado Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals affirmed that coercive judgment below. And then we appealed up to the Colorado Supreme Court, who decided to hear that case just a few weeks ago. And after the U.S. Supreme Court granted a big win in 303 Creative earlier this summer, affirming the right of all Americans to express what they believe without fear of government punishment.
Jack Phillips from Masterpiece Bakery. Jack, I know I've heard you say this before, but it's worth restating here again so people that don't know your story, don't know what happened, understand. Tell us your philosophy, your approach to how you provide your service of making these awesome cakes and other baked goods.
Well, first of all, I just want to make it clear that at Masterpiece Cakeshop, we serve everybody who comes in our shop, but we can't be, we just can't create every message people ask us to speak with our custom cakes. So our philosophy is you come in and it's a message that I can create. I will be happy to serve you in any way that I can. But if there's a message, say a cake with profanity, if I won't say it, I'm not going to write it on a cake, or cakes that are un-American, cakes that would belittle or denigrate another person. That's not going to happen either. Even if that cake is designed to denigrate gays, which I've had requests for, it's a message of the cake. It's the what, it's not the who. And so we told the two men that came in the first time, and the attorney who's suing us this time, will be glad to serve you anything else. Any custom cake that we would make for anybody, but there are cakes and messages that we can't express for anybody. And when those cakes fell into that category, then we had to decline them, and we tried to do that respectfully and kindly. But it just didn't work out that way, and we ended up in court. So
outside of this obvious attempt to create more litigation that drags you back into court, Jack, have you since the original case had people come in your opinion, to simply test the truthiness, I guess, of your words, or to try to get you to do something that, you know, they think is just so outrageous that it would be contrary to what you've stated?
Yeah, we've had all kinds of different things. In fact, we had a federal lawsuit presented against us where a man, I don't know where he's from, but asked us to create a wedding cake for 3 people getting married to a computer. And so just goofy things like that. Or
wait a minute, what did the computer look like? No, I'm kidding. That's not the standard. I just wondered.
We told him we couldn't create a cake like that, and so that person sued us in federal court, and that case was subsequently dismissed. But we've had, you know, a number of crazy orders like that. But we've also had people come to our defense that would be maybe surprising to most, including a man who's a former gay activist who testified on our behalf in our recent trial, and also went through deposition, knowing that the opposing attorney who deposed him was going to try and tear him up and make him say something that he didn't want to. But he defended us because he knew that we served him, you know, graciously, and we would create anything that he ordered that we would make for anybody else. And his sexual orientation had nothing to do with it. It's just whatever cakes people would ask for. So he testified on our behalf. So we've had both sides of that.
Jake, I get the message piece. I get the First Amendment piece. And I do want to ask you about, hey, does 303 answer everything about this. Is it dispositive? I want to get there. But let me ask this. A bunch of texters have said, look, what's crazy is these people can go to 8 billion other places. I made that number up, bakeries. In fact, somebody just sent me a text of one called lebakerysensual.com, which is right out of Denver. And they could get anything that they made there. They don't need to force Jack to do it. How much does the legal argument depend on the fact that there are alternatives? Because if it's just a message-driven thing, it seems to me if Jack were the only cake baker on the planet Earth, he wins that argument. That's my sense of it. But you tell me, how much does it matter that there are alternatives out there to Jack?
Well, it's helpful. I mean, the government has no business compelling anyone to express a message that goes against what they believe. That's the rule. But to the extent that we get into the government's justification, in Jack's first case, evidence surfaced that there were about 80 cake shops within a few miles of Jack's shop around Denver, and certainly plenty of opportunities for people to get cakes expressing messages that they agree with. So there are plenty of other people who can create cakes consistent with their beliefs. The government doesn't need to force Jack to say something he doesn't believe when they can easily find that somewhere else.
I asked you about 303 Creative. Is this game, set, match, or is it a different issue that the Colorado Supreme Court's going to confront here?
No, so 303 Creative should mean that Jack wins his most recent case. And the reason for that is in the trial court found that the custom cake, blue on the outside and pink on the inside, symbolized a gender transition, and then went into detail about what that symbolism meant. For example, the color blue represents male, the color pink represents female, and the court said it's not uncommon for people to come to cake artists requesting expressive cakes, especially in the context of gender reveals. So in light of all of this, it's very clear that the cake expresses a message, and if that cake expresses a message, which it does, 303 Creative means that the government can't force Jack to express that message. It violates his beliefs. So we're very hopeful. This is the first time that a court's going to be able to apply that 303 Creative decision to Jack's case. We're very hopeful that if the Colorado Supreme Court reaches the First Amendment issue, that it's going to uphold Jack's right to express what he believes without fear.
Well, Jake, when you say if they reach that issue, are you saying, hey, we might end up winning on a procedural ground here that you described earlier, and they won't even have to get into it?
Absolutely. We shouldn't even be in court right now. The attorney failed to appeal the administrative dismissal, and that could easily take care of the case.
Jake, let's talk long term, though. What's the better win? I mean, that to me seems like a win that they can rectify, right? Like they just restart the process, and Jack spends another bunch of years, and you guys spend a bunch of another donor money trying to defend about this, as opposed to they get rid of the procedural argument or they rule against you, but they rule on the First Amendment issue. And my sense is, I was going to ask you this, whoever wins in front of the Colorado Supreme Court, is this issue done, or is it going to the U.S. Supreme Court? Is there going to be cert sought by either side, or what? And when I ask that question, what I mean is, shouldn't you just play for the big end, right? Like, shouldn't you hope they rule on First Amendment grounds so that this thing can get to the U.S. Supreme Court, and with a 6-3 conservative majority, you have folks weighing in on this that will finally put a nail in the coffin of this garbage?
Well, we certainly want to win for Jack and to get him out of court, first and foremost. Obviously, we would love for the Colorado Supreme Court to faithfully apply 303 Creative and uphold Jack's right to express what he believes and to not punish him for declining to express messages that go against his faith. It would be wonderful to have a fantastic opinion affirming that. If Jack loses at the Colorado Supreme Court, certainly we would appeal that decision up to the U.S. Supreme Court and ask them to apply 303 Creative to affirm free speech for all, including Jack Phillips in this particular case. So there are ways that the case could stop at the Colorado Supreme Court. The main one is if Jack wins on this procedural issue. If the court says no, this attorney should have appealed the administrative dismissal, then that could be the end of the case, because there would be no need to resolve a federal issue after that.
Just this case, and that federal issue would remain unresolved. I mean, Jack, let me ask you, how much more of this are you willing to endure? And have you changed what you do in light of these super aggressive, oppressive legal actions taken against you.
Well, there was a point where we were deciding whether to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court in the first case, and the attorneys wanted to make sure that I understood all the issues involved. And I was thinking, we should appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. They're already not hearing our case. The worst that could happen is we appeal and they officially are not taking our case and we're done. And the attorneys made it clear that no, the worst that could happen is they take your case and you lose. And I think that's the point where I realized that this was not just about Jack and his cake shop. This is about every American's right to live and work freely according to their conscience without fear of government punishment. And so as far as this has to go, if ADF is willing to defend us, I'm willing to keep going because this is a bigger fight than just me and my shop. This is free speech is for everyone. And this is a case, and the 303 creative case, these are cases that should solidify that for every American.
Are you going to stop, or have you stopped making wedding anniversary cakes, that kind of thing?
While we're still in litigation, we've decided not to create wedding cakes until that's finished. And hopefully this will be the trigger that allows us to get back to doing what I wanted to do when we first opened the shop 30 years ago. Create wedding cakes to help people celebrate these special occasions.
The obvious impact to you and Masterpiece of this litigation is something that I don't know that there's any way to compensate or to make up for it. Jake, you know that in some settings, in some systems, there's a loser pays approach to civil law and all this other stuff. I think I know the answer, but what's the consequence for another one of these junk lawsuits getting crushed by the Constitution? What happens to that other attorney?
Well, there's no penalty for fees here. Certainly, we would evaluate all options and what the statute provides. But the big win would be getting Jack out of court and hopefully upholding his freedom to express what he believes.
No doubt, Jake. I agree with you. My point is this. It is in many ways risk-free for people to continue to pillory and come at Jack, because outside of whatever effort or resources they have to put into the complaints and the lawsuit, they don't go out of pocket. They're not losing anything. It's not like they lose and they now have to pay for Jack's lost business and all that other stuff. Or am I misreading that?
No, there's no payment, obviously, that will be paid to Jack's. There's a consequence of having to pay for your own attorney's fees and cost of court and that kind of thing, but no deterrent in the sense of fee shifting, where the person bringing the lawsuit, if they lose, they have to pay the other side's attorney's fees or somehow restore the other person for all the harm caused along the way.
That doesn't exist here. That's crap. That's just my opinion. Jake, this other person, this attorney who came in and manufactured this lawsuit purely, for whatever ideological reasons they want, are they handling the case themselves, or do they have additional counsel, and who's funding their side?
No, they have additional counsel, and I'm not sure who's funding their case.
That's interesting. Jack, it sounds like regardless of the outcome of this, there's probably more legal fight ahead. And until and unless somehow the law comes down and definitively says one thing or the other, you're just going to keep doing this. You are not going to be deterred from continuing to bake cakes in the fashion that you've described.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add is Alliance Defending Freedom, the attorneys who represented me for over 11 years, have done so without ever charging me a dime. So it's not a free issue for them. It's cost a lot of money, and they run on donor support. And so if people are willing to donate to them, adflegal.org, that's an unsolicited ad for them. They never say, hey, would you mention this? This is just something that's close to my heart. It's something that protects everybody's right to free speech when ADF fights and wins for a person like me.
Say the website again, and Jake, you could say it too. What is the best way that people can help you guys out in the great work that you do?
Sure. If you want to learn more about Jack's story or all the other work we do at ADF, you can visit our website, adflegal.org. At Alliance Defending Freedom, we advocate for religious freedom, free speech, the sanctity of life, parental rights, and God's design for marriage and family. And we would welcome the support of your listeners.
This is my own personal editorial here. Jack, I so appreciate that there are people out there like you fighting this fight over and over and over again, because somebody else, and you could almost not blame them for it, might have taken a lesser approach and just said, look, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I didn't sign my family up for this. I didn't sign up for this. I'm just going to stop doing this and move on. Some people might have done that, and we wouldn't have the law that we have now. Maybe we don't even get the Lori Smiths and the 303 creatives. And so I appreciate that you're out there doing this. And Jake, I so appreciate Alliance Defending Freedom too, because if you're not there, Jack having all the guts, courage, and character in the world means nothing. Because as you know, Jake, the law ain't obvious or easy to navigate. And if you don't have people like you guys out there fighting for the people with the character like Jack, we don't get to a better place. My concern about this is the most obvious example I think I've ever seen of the government trying to step in and tell us what we can think and say. And that is horrifying to me.
Yeah, and that punctuates the significance of the 303 creative win this summer. We hope that that's going to deter government officials from harassing and coercing people that they disagree with moving forward, and certainly give Jack the win that he deserves here in this case.
Jack, any last words for folks out there?
I just want to say, like, for a businessman, people ask me all the time, we drew our line in the sand. We had made decisions before we opened the shop, what kind of cakes we would make, what kind of cakes we would decline. And even back in the early 90s, when we were figuring out all these things, we talked about cakes that celebrated same-sex weddings or cakes that celebrated marijuana. Back then, if you got marijuana in your car, you were going to jail. So we never thought anything. God gave us the grace to just determine those things way beforehand. And so I think people need to know where they're going to stand when these things come to them, because they quite easily could come to anybody.
Jack Phillips, man of character. Jake Warner, attorney out there doing the great work, even though he's from North Carolina. I'm sure you're a good person, Jake. We'll get into that later. But, the Colorado connection, I get it. Anyway, Jake, thank you. I hope we can have you on after victory at the Supreme Court. When's do we have any idea yet when they're going to hear this thing? Have you done the briefings already?
Briefing will conclude after the first of the year, so we're expecting argument sometime next spring.
Okay, well, listen, as long as they still allow me to be on air, I'd love to have you back on to have that conversation.
Well, wonderful. I hope we can have a good report when we come back.
Amen. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Jack. Hey, I love the interview. I could go on with them all morning, other than the fact that the radio station won't let me do that, and neither will the FCC. I need to tell you right now, though, about another superstar, different kind of thing, though. Gay Ribble. Another great person. I love that about this station, by the way. We attract good people of character. Now, I've told you a ton about Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team and the great things they can do selling your home and putting you in that next new dream home. I want to remind you about something I really haven't talked about a ton recently, and that is Gay, who is a big fan of adoption for very personal reasons. She's adopted. She's a big supporter of it. I have adoption in my immediate family. I am a huge fan. But being a huge fan and being lip supportive, that's not Gay. Gay goes out there and works on making families all the time. That's been a personal passion of hers, and it makes her, I think, special and unique. She's not just about churning and burning and making the money. She puts her heart into the things that she does and carves out time to promote adoption. And who doesn't want to work with someone that you like, that you feel good about, that inspires you to be a better person? That's Gay Ribble too. That's the group that she works with, Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team. You can reach them, of course, at gayhasthebuyers.com. Gay is G-A-Y-E, hasthebuyers.com. You can also check out sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. It's a long one, but they're all easy words. Sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. You can also check them out here anytime that you want. We have them on all the podcasts as well. 833-301-SOLD is their number, 833-301-SOLD. Going to cut away for an overdue break. When we come back, I'd love to hear from you. What did you hear in that? And let's have the conversation. What do you think about it? Some folks have texted in here and said things like, why not just put a sign out that says, no, unless you're a WASP, don't come in, or put a sign out that says right to refuse. Let's talk about that. What are the limits to what you would allow someone to say, no, I won't serve you on. Jack's case is so unique, but I want to have that conversation with you. 303-696-1971. We'll check the text too. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Pardon me. Billy, tell the listeners, what's the purpose of the foghorn?
Because we can't see Heather Gardens.
It's true. It's true. You look outside this window here. I wonder if you're experiencing the same thing. It's like pea soup out here. It is thick. I feel like I'm back in London looking for Jack the Ripper, not Jack the Cake Baker, who we just had on. My thanks to Jack Phillips. By the way, if I'm not the prince of segues, I've got to at least be a duchess somewhere along the line, that whole royal lineage. Jack Phillips, thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your busy workday. And Jake Warner as well from Alliance Defending Freedom. Man, that group does great work. The idea that the government has set in place some governmental mechanism to protect civil rights, I think that's absolutely 100% necessary. Listen, my mom, God rest her soul, was one of the chief investigators for the Office for Civil Rights in Denver for many, many years before she passed away. So I'm a big fan of that. But the way that it's being used here, and especially the way the Colorado Civil Rights Commission had handled Jack's initial case, there's got to be a revisitation of what we've set in place, and especially for lawsuits like this. And this loser pays idea is something that exists in regular suing someone for money kind of an environment in some places, but not all places. And it seems to me, if you are the plaintiff in a case like this, especially one that is so absolutely intentional and deliberate, not because you have been hurt yourself, but because you're trying to manufacture a claim for some other political purpose, and you lose, that there has to be some kind of a penalty. I'm not talking about loss of liberty. There must be a way for a guy like Jack Phillips, if the Supreme Court, whether it's at the state or federal level, comes back and says, nope, you're right, they're wrong, that you should have to pay some type of penalty, and a huge one. Because I don't want to discourage righteous cases, but I do want to discourage garbage cases like this one. And what is so offensive to me is what I said in the last segment, this notion that we're going to use the government to coerce people to say things they don't believe in, that they don't want to say. I mean, liberty at its core, the First Amendment, I mean, out the window. This is garbage. Here's a guy that hasn't said, hey, I hate gays, I don't want to do cakes. He has never said that. That's not what he said. It's like, listen, I'll make a cake for any person on the planet Earth. I won't put just any message they want. I love the example of profanity. If I'm not going to say it, I'm not putting it on a cake. I'm not writing it there. Makes total sense to me. But the fact that there's this attorney out there doing this, this is not good faith. In my opinion, this is not an act of good faith. It's just embarrassing that it's gotten this far. The Court of Appeals, I haven't read that opinion. I want to take a look at it and see why this thing survived. And if you got lost a little bit in the conversation with Jake about whether it's better to win on procedural or substantive grounds, Jake gave the right answer. The right answer is we want our client as quickly as possible to be out of this litigation. That's the right answer, right? But Jack's going to be targeted again. Once they win this procedure, if they win on this procedural ground, and what he's talking about is she being this attorney, should not have been allowed to get to the Supreme Court or anything else because she didn't do this other appellate procedural thing. She shouldn't be in court right now. Oh, okay. You win on that, right? Yay. What's going to happen the next day? I think she calls in. We have a press conference right now on the Look, let's do this. Jay, hang on. I promise we'll get you on, Jay. I promise before the show ends. But we're going to go right now. The Maine governor is addressing this Robert Card thing out of Maine. Shoot it.
In memory of those we lost, reiterate that we are standing by them, and in honor of those who were, and that we are ready to provide any help injured. President Biden and I have ordered all U.S. flags and state of Maine flags to be lowered to for the next 5 days. Maine State Police, we need to help our communities heal.
Billy is trying to manipulate the audio feed here to get the one that sounds best. This is Governor Janet Mills. She's a Democrat for what it's worth. She's the governor of Maine. She's talking about
for free and confidential counseling. 988. Look, Lewiston is a special place. It's a close-knit community. I'm profoundly saddened to stand before you today.
Now we've got her twice, just at different points in time. She sounds wonderful. That's all right. We'll get back to it. Billy's gonna work the information there.
Lewiston is a special place. It's a close-knit community with a long history of hard work, of persistence, of faith, of opening its big heart to people everywhere. Lewiston is where I worked for years. It's where I met and married my husband and where our girls went to school. I love this place just as I love our whole state with my entire heart. I'm so deeply saddened, as is every one of the 1.3 million people of this beautiful state. This city did not deserve this terrible assault on its citizens, on its peace of mind, on its sense of security. No city does, no state, no people. No words can truly or fully measure the grief of Maine people today. Our small state of just 1.3 million people has long been known as one of the safest states in the nation. This attack strikes at the very heart of who we
While
are.
this is playing, and it's not hugely informative, but it's important that Fox News is updating right now. And I should tell you, every time there's a mass shooting, the numbers are generally off, and they can be significant. Here, what we're hearing from Fox, what we're seeing is 18 confirmed dead. We'd initially heard between 16 and 22. 18 dead, and instead of the early report from last night, they thought up to 60. 13 injured. 18 people dead, 13 injured. Just to put that in perspective, at least in my experience, Columbine High School had 13 dead, 24 injured. Aurora Theater had 12 dead, 70 injured. So this is huge. This is significant. And what the governor says is meaningful and important, but I want you to picture it in this way. Each person that was killed or injured has a lifetime before them of people that they've had relationships with and contact with. Now, the most immediate victims of this thing are obviously the family members and friends, but it extends beyond that. There are going to be people who know the people that were related to these deceased. There are going to be people who open up Facebook and see this and think, oh my God, that's my friend from high school, or I was in their wedding. The ripple effects from a mass murder, a mass casualty event like this are really almost ungageable. They almost unquantifiable is probably a better term. And they'll last for a long, long time. So when the governor is speaking here, this isn't, in my opinion, this isn't political. This isn't grandstanding. This is appropriate that the head of government do this. We saw Governor Polis. I saw him in person after STEM. He came out and talked at the press conference after STEM. You need to have this happen. But my hope is that this quickly gives way to an update on this is what we know about the case. Here's how we're going to get this sucker, and find out whether or not he still poses an immediate risk or he's just dead rotting somewhere and we're waiting to find his body. That's my hope. My hope is guy's already taken his own life, whether it's the product of mental illness or just trying to escape the consequences of his evil conduct. We'll keep this thing going. Billy's monitoring this. We'll keep this thing going, and we'll cut in live if they give us any good information. But right now, it's the governor doing what the governor needs to do. I think she's yielding the microphone right now. Let's see. Let's hear who this guy is.
Thank you very much, Governor. We certainly appreciate your support. The city of Lewiston does, the state of Maine, and certainly our first responders. We feel that love every day.
Public Health and Safety Commissioner. No idea what the hell that is.
I would also say that we want to say thank you to a really large number of other elected officials across our state, whether that's the federal delegation, local elected officials, and many others that are part of organizations or law enforcement agencies that truly wanted to join us today at this particular press event and wanted to speak on behalf of
I hope he's
their
getting us some facts. Keep it going, Billy, but let me just say that you can turn it down a hair until he gets to it. Let's be clear about this. Maine hasn't had a death penalty, I think since oh, Billy says we really need a break. Well, I've screwed us once again. All right, we're going to cut away for a break. I have hosed us on so many different levels, but there's just too much going on. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Joe, I promise I'm going to get to you. It's just going to have to be, I just don't have enough time to do you justice. So if you'll hang on or call back, I promise we'll get you on. Listen, I got to tell you about something awesome that's out there that Billy and I have been the beneficiaries of, and it's called UltraCur. It is available to you for free. Now, let me just tell you, this is an all-natural, curcumin-based, patented product that takes away the pain, man. It reduces inflammation. It's an antioxidant. It's been a difference maker in terms of the speed with which I've recovered. Billy, there's a police dude talking to monitor this. With which I've recovered from these ridiculous runs in preparation for this marathon. There's an easy way to go find it, right? You just go to your Vitamin Cottage. There's a billion of them around. Go in there. Ask for the Vitamin Manager. Don't try to find it on your own, because you won't. Vitamin Manager has it. That's how popular these things are. They keep running out of them. They'll give you a free 3-day supply. You go get another 3-day supply for someone you love or you care about, and you give it to them. And within 48 hours, half of everybody feels some kind of relief. Half of those within 2 hours. UltraCur, go check it out right now at your local natural grocers. When we come back, Jay, Joe, everybody else, the text as well. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll them out shelves. Your clutter transformation experts create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll them out shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly. To clear the clutter, contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll them out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today. Say goodbye.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It's that final hour of the Thursday show. Fluid. That's how I'd describe the situation out of Maine. It does not sound like they still have this guy. There's a tip line being flashed up on the screen on Fox News right now. There's a press conference. Billy's been monitoring. It doesn't sound like anything super sexy or informative has come out so far. Billy's shaking his head. No, nothing like that. We've heard the obligatory and necessary comments by the governor. Got to say stuff like that. But it's time now to get rid of the political stuff and get right to the business of finding this guy. My prediction is he's dead. I was talking offline with the IT and baking guru himself, Mark Crowley. He's got a spidey sense. Dude was, former Denver police. So he's on the take. No, I'm kidding. He longtime police officer, and he said he thinks they're going to find him within the hour. I don't know if that's true or not. I just think he's going to be dead. It is harder to find someone in many ways when they're dead, right? Like you can't count on them being seen anywhere else. They're not going to make a mistake by reaching out to someone or using a credit card or driving somewhere and getting pulled over. If this guy's taken his own life, and it depends on how he's done it, it's a little bit harder to find him. Now, maybe the bloodhound thing, I talked to Mark about that, but nonetheless, we'll update you. 18 dead, 13 injured in a horrific, evil shooting that took place in Maine. A lot of questions need to be answered over time. And one of those questions is going to be, why did this happen when this dude had been locked up for 2 weeks over the summer after claiming he wanted to blow up an army base and that he was hearing voices? That's going to be the big, tough one here after we get resolution on who this guy is and where he is. I mean, obviously, if they catch this guy, he's going to plead insanity or something, because that's the only way out from a lifetime in prison is to plead guilty by, and I think Maine has an insanity statute. Nonetheless, let's get back to the last hour too. That is Jack Phillips and Jake Warner had called in to discuss the latest round. And I say latest because I don't know if it ever ends for Jack. Jack has just become the target of the left, because once you do something they don't like and you win and beat them, you need to be canceled. You need to be destroyed. And the way to do it is the court system. I imagine it's protests after that, but the court system. And so we've had this conversation, ask some questions. In my opinion, there needs to be some sort of punitive sanction for frivolous lawsuits that drag people into court repeatedly, even on civil rights issues. We don't want to do anything to discourage legitimate claims, but this is not a legitimate claim. This is not a woman who in earnest wanted to have this cake. This was the only way to get it. This is a woman who called him to have this cake made and spelled out all the reasons what the cake stood for, all the messaging, right after the Supreme Court stood up for Jack and against the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. I mean, it's just obvious why this thing happened. If and when, I think when is the bigger one, she loses, she should be on the hook. And I mean personally on the hook for paying back Alliance Defending Freedom every single penny they spent defending Jack. Jack should be able to bring to the court, this is the impact on my life. This is how much time I had to take off, how many cakes I didn't sell, the measurable economic impact to the loss of business. He should be able to bring all those things forward, and she should have to pay it out of her pocket. Now, frankly, I don't care if the lefties or Soros shows up and write a check, but I want him to get reimbursed and Alliance Defending Freedom. Asked your opinion about those things. 303-696-1971. I promised Jay we'd get him on, and true to my word, Jay, you're on 710.
Oh, thanks, George. Great points. An interview about Jack Phillips. I realize now that he's been tormented for over a decade. I went to fundraisers there at Jack's place, and Casey, Peter Boyles are out sitting in front of the building, buying baked goods and so forth. And what's interesting to me, and I think I recall, wasn't there a commission or some sort of board that John Hickenlooper appointed that had a hand in the form, or for maybe Billy knows, but I remember they were speaking about a group and a board set forth that was helping to harm Jack Phillips' freedom of making the type of cake he wants to.
I'm going to look for it while we're talking. I don't remember that. If you had more details, some sort of a committee, you thought?
I'll look it up. Yeah, I believe so. This is such a long time ago. We've gone through, we built buildings since we've got property rights issues, and I've gone from appeals court to Colorado Supreme Court and won every time. But these are 7-figure deals. I mean, this is a lot of money these people are spending going after Jack Phillips when they can just go across the street and get whatever cake they like from whoever they like. And I agree with you completely on the payment of restitution for torturing Jack in a small business. There has to be some way for they keep them from tormenting this one small business in Lakewood.
I think that this is a huge boon to really just attorneys. I'm not taking anything away from Jake Warner. I mean, we need to have attorneys like that who have dedicated themselves to fighting for our freedoms. But anytime you hear about this litigation stuff, it is really only ever going to benefit attorneys on either side of this thing. There's other stuff that we've done in the law, and it's a little bit of a segue away from Jack and into what we've been talking about with the dude out of Maine. But do you remember that one of the package of quote unquote gun control or gun reform laws that the legislature passed last year was to lower the bar for the ability to sue gun manufacturers to the point where if a gun at any point ever hurts another person, anybody can sue the gun maker. Like
Wow.
That's our new laws. We've set the bar so low. You can't even defend on the idea that, well, isn't the person that pulled the trigger the one responsible for misusing our device? That's not even a defense. That's a defense available to drunk drivers everywhere. Car manufacturers for drunk driving claims, but nonetheless, that is the kind of law that encourages litigation because they know that this lawfare, this litigation warfare can beat people down and discourage people from daring to step outside the line set by government. And in many ways, whether it's to attack the Second Amendment through keeping people from making firearms or jacking up the price of making them to the point where less people have access to them, or if it's Jack, I mean, these are real efforts by government to encourage other people to come in and limit our freedoms. That's the only thing, that's the only purpose these laws seem to serve for some.
Yeah, agreed. You were talking about the Second Amendment earlier and the use of particular devices, whether it be automatic or single bolt action, but let's say the case of an AR-15. Those folks that don't believe that you could defend themselves or should not be able to defend themselves with a gun, I think have never seen in person with their own eyes, not on TV, the tragic situation when you cannot defend yourself and someone comes in and does a front door entry or even something on the side of the road. If they've never seen that personally, then they have a different opinion. It's kind of like never having a really bad car accident where you total your car. Well, the pain and the sound and all those things that you remember when you went through that. And I've seen both. And as far as an AR-15 goes, we use ours for keeping gophers off our land so that the cows don't step in the holes. It works very well. I'm not defending. I think what happened in Maine is disgusting. I have family there and in New Hampshire. But the issue is, can you defend yourself? Because unfortunately, our fine police officers can't be in front of everybody's front door or outside their car door.
Well, I know that this is geographically and historically unique, but how many of the folks out there on October the 7th in Israel would have wished to have access to firearms when the evil Hamas dropped in through paraglider or other means to kidnap, rape, and massacre the defenseless? How many of them would have been like, pretty please, with sugar on top, I'll take anything at this point. And an AR-15 would have been a super nice implement for them to defend themselves.
Yeah. Well, and also, if you were allowed the right to have the gun, you could only have 50 bullets, and you know better than most, you're going to miss with half your rounds if you're a marksman. If you're defending yourself, so you just have 50 bullets, even if you're allowed to have a gun. And these are the same people. I have many people in business in my family that are Jewish that had to hide under the floorboards underneath the Gestapo in Germany because they didn't have guns when Hitler gathered up all the guns and then did whatever the hell he wanted, just like Marcos did in the Philippines. He gathered the guns and did whatever the hell he wanted to the people.
Jay, what
So
can I ask you then,
believe that
because you're knowledgeable on this stuff, man? Well, what's the answer then? How do we prevent another Robert Card or the Aurora mass shooting or any of these others? How do we do that? And I guess the options are I don't think there's any changes in the law that need to be made, and you can tell me why. Or yes, this kind of a law would make a difference.
Well, I'd love to talk to you about the Aurora killer because I know a lot about him, and I went to school in California where he did, and I know he was thrown out of school and he was sent to CU and all that. I don't know that you could defend that any more than you could defend me going and getting in my truck and running over 30 people today. I know I could do that successfully, right? If I wanted to, and it's a very lethal item. But my main concern with people saying that you shouldn't be armed is there are many people that listen to the radio that are blind, that are disabled, that can't defend themselves because of their height, weight, whatever the situation is, and they need gun. I know people that sit in a wheelchair and have a shotgun next to them, and they have the right to do that. And I believe that that's vital for the success of our society. And they're not out doing things horrible, nor that you are. You've defended people in many ways in your job. And it makes me furious because they've never seen it firsthand. They've smelled it, felt it, like those poor officers that had to take those young kids from the Batman movie from the killer.
For sure.
I mean, come on, it's awful. So I just feel that the people that can't defend themselves physically have to be able to defend themselves. And I'm not saying they need anything specific, but I am really, really concerned with folks saying, oh, well, that's fine. Just let somebody else do it. We'll call 911. Well, that doesn't always work.
Well, Jay, I appreciate this, man. Thanks for the phone call and the perspective, as always. I mean, you've got the background and the experience. What do you think about that? I am still struggling here to accept that this is just what's going to happen. There's nothing more that can be done, and there's nothing more that should be done. If Maine had something like the law that we have, and I don't like ours does not provide nearly the due process protections, in my opinion, that the Constitution and freedom guarantee. But we lost that battle when we lost the House and the Senate and the governorship and all that other stuff. We had the ability to get more due process in there, but we gave it up over politics, and now we're stuck. And so I guess the question is, what now? Is there anything that can be done? I ask the same question all the time about the pain that I feel increasingly in my knees. I think I've got my dad's knees. My dad has his knees scoped a long, long time ago. I don't ever want them scoped. I don't know if it's a thing where I've got to prevent problems through yoga, better eating, more abusive running. I don't know the answer, but I know who has the answer when that pain sets in chronic-like, and that's our friends at QC Kinetics. They're going to give you an option that doesn't involve the pills. It doesn't involve the cutting and the rehab and all of that other stuff that just seems to make life suck, especially when you're later on in it. You want to walk in and walk out same day, start to get that relief because someone has used you through regenerative medicine to help fix you. That's QC Kinetics. Call their local medical professionals. Try to stump them. I mean, ask them as many dang questions as you can before you get to the point where you're comfortable enough to move forward. What a great way, by the way, to use your HSA and those other and the FSA and all that stuff. Call them at 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986, or you can check them out at qckinetics.com. That's QCkinetics.com. Here's some text. That was the Civil Commission Board. Hick appointed the members. That was this is Alexa telling us this. Ours and another text. Ours and libs will never get anywhere on the issue of violence. We talk past each other. Libs want to abolish the second, and ours talk about social collapse. You mean if we don't have the second, or if the second is severely limited? Yeah, I'm thinking about it. It is clear to me that the folks on the left think that if we could magic away all of the guns out there, that we would be a safer, more loving society. One, that could never happen. There is no Thanos finger snap that's going to make all the guns disappear. That just is never going to happen. In fact, the only thing the law can do is have a role in disarming the law-abiding, because the law really only applies to the law-abiding. The folks that are breaking it already aren't going to care that there is an assault weapons ban. Only you and I will. So I think that they have this mythological idea that if we reduce the number of guns, we're going to reduce the number of gun crimes. I don't believe that either. I haven't seen any study that suggests that either. I do think that there has to be an answer that's explored. I think that answer is we need to find a way to more proactively get between people that shouldn't have guns and guns, whether they own them lawfully previously or not. What the right answer is, I don't know. The red flag thing, the way it's currently drafted and in place here in Colorado, is not protective of due process. It has run afoul. It's like in the future here, anybody is going to be allowed to claim anybody else. You get cut off in traffic, someone flips you the bird, yells you, I hope you get in a car accident and die. Boom. Red flag. That's where we're going with this thing. The idea that we would arm the Attorney General of the state of Colorado with the ability to pursue the suspension of someone's Second Amendment rights. What in the hell does that guy know? What information is he going to be privy to that local law enforcement or family members aren't going to have? And if it's, well, we just need another person to maybe, if they disagree with the sheriff, maybe the sheriff doesn't want to pursue it, we can have the most partisan attorney general in the state's history weigh in and they can go get it. That's just utter political garbage. That's not protective of the Second Amendment or the community. But that's what we've done. We're going to continue. So that's not the answer. But is there a version of some law where we can get between somebody who we say that dude is unhinged? I mean, how many times have you come across somebody on the street or in public and you've seen them react to a situation and think, oh my God, that person is dangerous. I've seen it. And then do you ever ask yourself, I wonder if they have access to guns? Maybe there's something. I just don't know what the answer is to protect both due process and the public. There's got to be some kind of balancing. I don't know what the perfect answer is. I just know what we're doing right now doesn't work. And certainly what Maine has done didn't work. There are some failures there. And I want to see who the failures are in that process. If there's blame to go around, by God, let's find it, but not for the purposes of just affixing blame. That's important, but also moving forward. What steps can we possibly take to keep this from happening again? Bill from Parker is on the line. Bill, stick around. I promise I'm going to get to you. Got to do one other. Oh, I got to obviously get a pen. Maybe we can get an advertiser who puts out nice pens, because this one right here from the Pentel people sucks. Art of Granite. His name's Mitch Floria. This guy is a freedom-loving businessman, fantastic family guy, fantastic entrepreneur. And I say that because when you start your own business, that's what you are. You are a small business guy that has grown into a decent-sized business where he just puts smiles on people's faces, makes your house more valuable, both in terms of dollars, but also in terms of satisfaction. He does it through your kitchen and bathroom countertops, and maybe your finished basement countertops as well. Someday, I dream of having the money where I can finish the basement entirely instead of what I'm doing now and put in that kind of a wet bar thing. Mitch is the dude to call for the countertops. Here's the thing. It's not just the selection, and there's so much to choose from. And yes, go online to theartofgranite.com. That's theartofgranite.com. But drive out there, honestly, because it gives you a chance, too, to meet Mitch face-to-face. And when you do that, he's going to hypnotize you. I don't know how he does it. Maybe he just does it with the truth and the handshake, but he's going to hypnotize you and you're going to sign up with him. Don't forget when you do, though, yes, you're getting the wholesale values, but to get the extra special sweet stuff, you just got to tell him, I'm a George listener on 710 KNUS. Boom. Throws in the bathroom countertop for free with the kitchen countertop package. Or if you're just doing one room at a time, that's cool too. He'll throw in the sink for free with the countertop package. All you have to do is to reach out to Mitch Floria on the cell phone that rings in his pocket, 303-386-5919, 303-386-5919. Going to cut away for a break. Going to come back and get these texts, get these calls, including Bill, 303-696-1971, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. That's a breakfast burrito right there. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS, still monitoring what's going on out there with the manhunt out of Maine. Until then, we're going to get right back to the phone lines. Bill from Parker, from beautiful Parker, you're on 710. Bill, what do you think?
Good morning, George. Yeah, I've called in about this before. This boils down to the complete redefinition of the Second Amendment in the Heller and Braun decisions by the Supreme Court. I call it they've added what I call the scat rider. You know what scat is, right?
Yeah.
In this case, it stands for Scalia, Alito, Thomas rider to the Second Amendment that completely metamorphosed it from a states' right, which it originally and always was, up to and including there was a Brown decision in 1939 that pretty much spelled it out, that it's a state militia amendment. And they redefined it as an individual amendment, even though it's nowhere to be found in the wording of the amendment. It refers to a militia, which is a collective noun, not an individual. And the history is that it was the southern states who wanted to have assurance that they could have state militias in case the federal government came out against slavery and wanted to enforce anti-slavery laws in their state. They'd be able to resist that physically. That's the history of the Second Amendment. And these guys have completely rewritten it as if it was an individual right.
Well, except that, Bill, and hear me out on this. The militia as it existed back then, and remember, the founders were incredibly concerned about big-time, long-standing armies like we have now. That was not their goal. Yep. Their goal was they wanted you and me to be able to pick up arms and go and defend the community or the state or whatever. But that requires you and me to have firearms. Do you know what I'm talking about? So this idea that it's, hey, all they were talking about was the National Guard, that's just not true. That's not what it was.
Right. So this idea that we're all these Minutemen at the ready, this posse waiting to be summoned, that's all fine and good. The problem is the whole well-regulated part. This guy was in the reserves or something, right? Which would kind of qualify as a
That's
militia.
what I read,
Here's
that he was
question.
maybe even a firearms trainer or something.
Yeah. So here's my question.
20 years,
if
Billy
it's a
says.
well-regulated militia, they should say, hey, this guy's gone off the rails here. We need to reassess, kind of like a red flag, and take his guns away and see if he should have access to this kind of firepower. That's what a well-regulated organization would have happen. But there's no mechanism for that at all right now, because that's completely been written out of the Constitution. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I disagree with that in this way as well. The Constitution has a whole bunch of words in it that folks have interpreted over the last 200 plus years to include things like a right to abortion. Well, abortion existed back then. Ain't nobody used that word. Right to privacy, that word existed back then. Nobody wrote that in the Constitution, but we've interpreted in there. How do you then say, well, when it comes to the Second Amendment, those words are all we can turn to look at. We can't look at the historical context, but the other stuff, yep, you can actually make up words that aren't in the Constitution.
It amazes me that people understand that Roe v. Wade created a right out of thin air, but they don't understand, they refuse to understand. They willingly ignore the fact that the same thing happened with the Second Amendment with Heller and Braun. They just created a right out of thin air for an individual right to keep and bear arms. Unregulated, not well-regulated militia at all. That's the problem. If they weren't well-regulated militias, the Army throws people out all the time because of mental issues. All the time, right? You know that. So, that's the way it should be.
But that's not
about how scared you are.
They didn't mean the Army Reserve as the well-regulated militia. They also didn't mean that for the National Guard. Their well-regulated militia was in the time of need. You and me and others can be called into action in defense. That's the well-regulated part. But it wasn't, hey, the well-regulated militia is going to provide to you firearms when you need to be called into service. That wasn't the history of the country. That wasn't the history of the debates that took place. It was because you and I already had the firearms.
So you're saying the well-regulated is simply the ability to call people together, to send out an alarm to get people together?
That's right.
No, I think you're really undervaluing the word regulated there. Regulated, it implies, a training, meeting standards.
Yeah. You get called together for those purposes. Who calls you together?
The militia.
Okay. Well, the militia is made up of you and I. There's the militia doesn't just create itself, right? There's some other body that does it, but it can't happen if you and I aren't armed. That's what took place when they were drafting the Second Amendment. They didn't want standing armies. Well, that's what we've got now. They wanted you and I to be able to defend our homes, our communities, the countryside, and the state. And that wasn't because the government would then say, I'm calling you into service and I will provide you with a firearm accessible and usable by you only in time of service in the militia. That is not what the Second Amendment says, and it's not the history of the Second Amendment.
Well, I mean, to me, you're taking the words well-regulated and giving them zero meaning at all. It just means you can call a guy up. I mean, that doesn't mean anything.
So who's the militia?
You look at
so who's the militia?
Yeah, well, according to, back in the day, it was a state organization.
There's no state organization for the militia back at the time of the Constitution.
There were state-level organizations. It wasn't a federal militia. It was a state. It was each state would have its own militia or militias. All right, and the South had a tradition of having, you can call them posses or you can call them militias, that would go out and round up runaway slaves and make sure that slaves stayed on the farm. And that was the genesis for this whole thing.
I think I think you're confusing an organized militia with a more unorganized militia, which exists under federal law as well. The well-regulated part is not defined to say that you can only have firearms if you're part of a well-regulated militia. The well-regulated militia is necessary. But back in the day, they didn't provide firearms to the men in the community. You and I had them.
No. Right. That's correct. And that would still be the case today. But, you got to think of another thing, George. Things have changed in the sense that back then, you could not really have a mass murder. You could kill one person, then you took another 2 minutes to reload. Okay, good luck with killing the second person.
It wasn't 2 minutes.
Now, 30 seconds, whatever. Good luck killing that second person. But now, what was the guy in Ohio or someplace? He shot 35 people in 30 seconds. I think 7 of them died. That was a couple of years ago. Okay, a good guy with a gun. I think Maine has a carry law. I'm pretty sure they do. Well, they do now because of Braun.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Well, Braun allows you to carry. So I don't know if there were anybody in these places that were carrying. But if they were, obviously they were not effective. And if they weren't, it's their right to be able to go out and enjoy an evening safely without having to worry about, getting into a shootout with somebody. When you have when you have people ripping off dozens of rounds in a few seconds, the good guy with a gun, he doesn't stand a chance. Even the cops are outgunned half the time.
Yeah, it seems though that
and it was never that way back in the day.
It seems that we've figured out a way to apply the First Amendment to protect freedom of expression, even though back then they could have never conceived of even the friggin' telephone, let alone instantaneous mass dissemination of information, both false and otherwise, through all the means that we have now. So somehow that amendment's been able to survive all that stuff. This one feels like it could survive those changes as well. Nobody's ever said you can have a crew-served weapon or a tank or a nuclear. Nobody's ever said that. And there's been a lot of writing about that in these opinions, including Scalia, who's written about it as well. But the idea of having a firearm that can shoot out multiple rounds at a time, to apply your interpretation of, hey, we're frozen in time with the firearm technology of the day, you couldn't even have a bolt action rifle under the Second Amendment, under that interpretation.
If you were a true originalist, then arms would be anything that existed in 1878, which would be muzzle loaders, blunderbusters, and bludgeons, stuff like that.
And that's how you view the First Amendment too, that if you're a true originalist, you're stuck with just whatever the modes of expression that existed at the time.
I'm not saying I'm an originalist. I'm saying I would have no problem with anybody and everybody having a muzzle loader, no questions asked. But when
I wouldn't,
above that,
buddy, I wouldn't. I wouldn't want this guy to have a muzzle loader. I wouldn't want kids to have a muzzle loader. I disagree with you.
Well, it wouldn't have bothered me if he had a muzzle loader. He would have at most killed one person, But as it is now, he's up to, 18? And who knows if that clock's still ticking.
So just to be clear, to be an originalist, you're bound by whatever technology existed at the time that they drafted.
Well, that's what it would be, yeah. I mean, you could certainly make that argument. I'm not going to get wrapped up in what the word originalist means. But I think it's safe to say that if the founding fathers knew there would be such a weapon that you could shoot 30 people, one person a second, before anybody even knew what was going on. You'd have blood all over the place. I think they would have been pretty explicit about the nature of that
I couldn't
right.
disagree more, man, because the community back
Okay.
then didn't have the same kind of whack jobs we have right now, walking around just willy-nilly shooting people. They had murder and they took care of murder, but I don't think they would have batted an eye at a semi-automatic high-capacity magazine rifle. I don't think they'd have batted an eye. In fact, they would have loved to have had that when King George came a knocking back, even in 1812 for that redo of the war that they lost. I think they would have loved to have had that. They would have loved to have had one of those rifles in every male hand out there.
I'm sure they would have, but would they've also accounted for the fact that at the same time King George's army would have had the same weapons. So they wouldn't have really made any progress there. It would have been, they just would have had an arms race. And they'd still be fighting the same people, be a lot bloodier, a lot quicker. George, sometimes it helps in cases like this to do a thought experiment, like an extreme case, and just ask yourself, does this help me understand this better? Suppose as part of these weapons, suppose people could actually access Stinger missiles. And all of a sudden, planes would be flying in the sky. Would we sit around and be talking about mental health issues and stuff like that? Or would we be saying, gee, we really need to get these Stinger missiles under wraps? And we'll worry about the mental health later. And to me, an AR is closer to the Stinger missile end of the spectrum than it is to a musket,
Good Lord, man. I don't agree with that at all.
Think about the Aurora shooting.
Stinger missile is like an anti-armor or surface-to-air type missile. That's not even close. That's not even a question of what technology existed back in the day. It doesn't even exist for the same purpose.
It's an arm. Okay, it's an arm. Unless you're
so I'm stuck now. Unless I buy off on the hey, if it wasn't a flintlock that they had back in the day, you can't go anywhere. If I say that if I don't agree with that, then I have to eat that every single thing that falls under the definition arm is applicable under the Second Amendment. That doesn't make sense, man.
Remember, I said if. Let's suppose you had a situation. Would we say we need to mental health, or would we say, hey, you know what, we need to get these Stinger missiles off the street?
Yeah, we want to get the Stinger missiles off the street, and we don't want people like you and I to have them.
Right. And it's basically the same type of discussion with ARs. They, again, can rip off several dozen rounds before most people even know what's going on. Could you imagine, George, in the shooting, in a dark theater with a bunch of loud stuff on the screen, I start shooting. Could you imagine for 2 or 3 guys in the theater who brought in weapons? I realized it was a guns prohibited zone.
It was not a guns prohibited zone. That is a myth. It was not a guns prohibited zone.
Okay, then they could have brought these in. I was told that it was such a zone, but
because the Second Amendment extremists want that to be the reason why this happened, and no one returned fire. That's just not true. That is fake.
But what I was going to say is, people did this. If you had a couple guys who were going to engage in a dark theater now, how do you think that would work that seriously?
Yeah, listen,
it would have been a mess.
I've had this conversation a million times, Bill. I have little doubt in my mind that at least one person in that theater was armed, right? 400 people. My guess is at least one person was armed. But
why didn't you engage?
I'm telling you, man, in an environment like that, listen, I've trained on firearms, small arms. The environment you're put in is not like a theater where something like that happens. And I could see somebody armed in there thinking, oh, my sweet God, I don't know what to do here. I'm so scared I'm going to run away. I don't know who to shoot, how to shoot, what to shoot. But that's not an argument about the Second Amendment. Let me get to this point before I have to cut you loose because we're running out of time. Bill, what's your answer to this? How do you prevent this thing in Maine from happening?
You detrivialize guns. You get the access back to where it has some attachment to well-regulated.
How do you do that? How do you do that? You outlaw private ownership of firearms?
No. You limit it. You have people come in. Well, you have people. You have them get severe background checks. When you're in law enforcement, you know that people get background checks when they're in those types of things. They should get, what we do now is a cursory glance to see if he's got an outstanding felony or past felony. That's not a background check.
We also look to see if they've been convicted of domestic violence, if there's any protection orders out there. It's not cursory, it's legit.
Those are the two. What's the term instant background check mean? I mean, a true background check, George, takes many man hours. It usually takes place.
Oh, wait a minute. So you're suggesting that we need to engage in a security clearance type background check to be able to possess a firearm?
That would be a step, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my good Lord, buddy.
Why you just do it? We do it with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in the finance industry, in the security industry.
And then what do you do? What do you do with all the guns that exist right now?
Well, they're just going to have to. They're just going to have to be there. Probably you could do a buyback program. Most of these weapons that are used are freshly purchased, recently purchased. There's very few people grabbing the Luger out of Grandpa's attic that he brought home from the war and shooting people up. They're almost always very recently purchased weapons. That's happened up in the Boulder King Supers, for instance. Well, and Columbine.
Bill, first off, they got their weapons illegally. So the Columbine guys weren't going to be affected at all by the law you've described. So, I mean, that doesn't apply there.
There's no silver bullet law. What you have to do is you have to start.
I get that, but I'd like one that might actually make a difference. The thing you're proposing would have made no difference in Columbine. Here's the problem, Bill. I've talked to you for so long, and I love the conversation. You do a nice job. I've got to break. Billy's giving me the finger. Keep listening. Keep calling, Bill. I appreciate it. And by the way, Bill, you should know some texters agree with you. They're the ones we're blocking right now. No, I'm kidding. We'll read those when we get back to you. I got to tell you about a guy named DJC. That's the Daniel J. Kaplis. I talk about him every single day. Honored to do it. Proud to do it. Because this is a guy, when things go bad in your life that aren't your fault, you're looking for someone to be held accountable. And if it's not a criminal thing, and many times it's not, right? Like someone just made a mistake. It was negligence. It was an accident. They didn't intend it. There may not be a role for the criminal law there, but I tell you this, the criminal law can't fix what ails you. The civil law can't fix what ails you, but the civil law can give you something the criminal law can't, and that is the financial ability to accommodate for what was taken from you. Maybe it's the loss of enjoyment of life, or it's some sort of lifetime pain that ain't going away no matter what you do with it. Maybe it's the loss of a limb. Maybe it's the loss of a loved one. Criminal law is not set up to fix that. So we have the civil law out there to do it. And if you're looking for the champion out there, the big fighter out there that's going to get it done for you, it's Dan Kaplis, his partner, Baber Waheed. They've been doing this thing forever. Dan, literally forever. Baber for about 16, 17 years now. That law firm is easy to reach, and they only take righteous cases, right? They're not going to end up being the kind of, run-of-the-mill kind of burn them and churn them and burn them kind of a law firm out there where you see them up on trains and billboards and buses. That they don't do that. That's not their thing. Their thing is to fight for righteous victims in righteous cases. 303-770-5551. 303-770-5551 is the number. You can also find them at dankaplislaw.com. Kaplis, as always, is spelled C-A-P-L-I-S, dankaplislaw.com. When we come back, Frank, others calling in at 303-696-1971, even some of the text. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. I'm not sure why I came here this morning. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Final moments of the show. Yeah, will leave you without beautiful news if I don't do it right now. And that is Brent and Joyce Tolliver, who I talked about with Stefan yesterday when he was in the studio. He's been with them for such a long time. Honored to have them with the morning show right now. They do the roll them out shelves. And I learned something from Stefan yesterday. It's not just in your kitchen, which is the place where you can get the most bang for your buck. In my head, I thought, yeah, you've got the deep cabinets, all this other stuff. Why not get the most efficiency out of your kitchen you can? But he's talking about any place like closets, bathroom cabinetry, kids' rooms, all this. They do the roll them out shelves thing just about anywhere. And the offer that they make to you to get you in the door, because they know you're going to fall in love with them when you do, is that if you schedule your in-home estimate and they come in and check it all out and tell you, this is what we can do, this is where we can do it, this is how it'll benefit you. If you do that, you receive your first 4 rollouts installed at no charge. That's zero charge. That's an $80 value. Before tax, that's like $100 you got to earn to get that. They're just giving it to you for free. You'll see firsthand what wonders these experts can do to create and customize space in your kitchen, bathroom, laundry room. That's the one where I should have them come out. It's the laundry room. And the garage too, or any room. You just call them at 303-475-9601, 303-475-9601, or rollemoutshelves.com. M is EM, me backwards, rollemoutshelves.com. That's going to just about do it for us. We did not get the news I was hoping we would out of Maine, and that was that they had captured Robert Card, or at least found his dead body. We're going to continue to update you on that. You can count on Deborah and Stefan bringing you live updates as they develop. My thanks to Jack Phillips and Jake Weaver for giving us the updates on that very, very important lawsuit that's now headed to the Colorado Supreme Court. And of course, you've made the show magic. I'll be back tomorrow. It'll be Friday. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.